call to order the November 22nd, 2021 meeting of the Westford School Committee. Welcome, everybody. And as I often do, I didn't start the online one, so let's do that. Zoom. Okay, welcome to the meeting. I really appreciate people coming out tonight, whether virtually or in person. Okay, first up, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next up is the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion and then we can see discussion or questions.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as outlined on the November 22nd published agenda.
Second.
We've got Valerie with the motion, Alicia with the second. Any discussion? Well, I guess I'd start, do we want to talk a little bit about, are there any comments on the stipends that you wanted to raise, or is it speak for itself? Hopefully everybody should have had a chance to see the new stipends. Yes, Claire.
I just wanted to say something akin to what I say every year is it is always so amazing to see the wide range of clubs and activities that we are able to offer to our students. I love seeing new activities come forth because that usually means there's a student interest and that students have gone through the steps in the process to initiate a new club, and it's always fascinating to me what the topics are. And kudos to our staff who take the time to, beyond their normal workday to supervise these activities. It's always amazing. I did have one question, which was, it wasn't clear to me for there was a Blanchard club, the Pride Club. Was that one advisor or multiple advisors? It looked like it was like tier 2-3, and I wasn't sure if that was in reference to the tier or the number of advisors.
So the tier is the amount that is going to be paid out. If they choose to have more than one advisor, then that's split between the 2 or 3.
Got it.
Before I forget, I just wanted to clarify that the warrant MS means manual and the other warrant BS means void, and that we have a date change for the executive session minutes is actually for October 25th, 2021, not for public release. But I had a quick question on the stipend memo. Could you just talk a little bit about the line that says no additional funds are required, since we historically have reallocated funds from activities that are no longer conducted?
Sure. So that pertains to the fact that there's a set amount in the budget, and some activities no longer run, and then others are added in. So all of this is within the set amount that is allocated to clubs and activities at Westford Academy for the FY22 school year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments or questions? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to informational updates. Start with the superintendent update.
All right. So recently, and we'll be hearing from the 2 middle school principals shortly, but they both had different successful spirit weeks that they wanted us to share about, our spirit activities. Stony Brook had an entire week of spirit events that then resulted in a competition in Miss Advisories. Miss Fair's advisory was the champion, and so they had celebrated that. And Blanchard is celebrating a pajama day after they've collected over 600 items for the food pantry. Which I think was great. Very soon, we're going to have an opportunity for our elementary schools to participate in a plow truck naming contest. We've been working, it was actually Steve Cronin from the Department of Public Works had reached out to us with this idea. about giving students the opportunity to name the different equipment that we have. And so Town Manager Jody Ross, the three of us met to talk about it, and we have a plan to get the elementary schools involved with it, and so that they're gonna be able to come up with name options and then vote on the names, and then name, and we'll be able to see different trucks driving through town and different equipment as we're going into the winter. I think it'd be kind of fun.
Do you want to open that up
Love
to
that.
elementary students and school committee? I think I speak for the committee when I say our vote will be for Plowy
Plowy
McPlowy.
I knew you were going to say
Sorry.
I'm
that.
thinking Truckee McTruck.
Right. Yeah. Okay,
I'm
well,
sorry, we can
don't
move
give
on.
them too many ideas. Then just really the last thing was just, as we are approaching this holiday week, I know as a building administrator for a long time, we would always talk about it can be a really joyous opportunity for people. We want to be mindful of the fact that it's not always easy for everybody, and I think that's really important to remember, that there are people who don't look forward to this long weekend, and so we just want to continue to be supportive of everybody as we're going through the slightly interrupted week, and then we go into this long weekend, and then we come back and hit December. So it's just something that we should always keep in mind.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go with school committee updates, and just, I meant to remind the school committee in my email, but we have a full slate tonight on the agenda, so brevity will be appreciated. Sean?
So, Valerie, are you going to be talking about ARPA funds and finance committee? Any of that? Well, I could just relay some information that I got, which is from the CPAC, which is related to that, which is we did an informal discussion at the last CPAC meeting, and let me point out too that it is CPAC Awareness Month, November. But the question was, does CPAC have a viewpoint on how these funds should be used, things like that? And something that consistently got brought up regarding ARPA funds was hopefully for more training within the perspective of our instructional staff and our non-instructional staff regarding our highest need learners and things like that. Specifically, some programs that kept getting brought up were trauma-informed training, collaborative problem-solving approaches, things like that. And then there was also a discussion about, well, and related to this is, what are we as a district doing for mental health and SEL type to address problems that certain students are showing, now that we've made a full return post-COVID, things like that. And I think that we are there is an effort being made, but, maybe we're not articulating it well, or, but ARPA might be another avenue to look into that, so.
Thanks.
So, the town had asked for ARPA, phase 1 requests, with the deadline of last Friday. So I had sorted through the feedback that came in, and that was definitely covered, in other requests. So I grouped them into a couple of different focus areas and sent them to administration. They got back to me with a couple specific requests, and those have been shared with the town clerk.
Great.
We'll see where it goes from here.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Any other school committee updates? Alicia?
So policy met again last week, and we approved the I'm going to say it wrong. I'm sorry. The unanticipated bus route interruption policy. It has been approved. It's ready for an agenda. Tonight was packed, so it's not tonight, so hopefully it'll be up at the next meeting. Beyond that, we are still working through other MASC flagged policies, and Gloria has met with Betsy Murphy and some students about the SACs, so hopefully we'll have an update on that shortly as well.
Nice. Other school committee? Okay, thank you. Student update.
So I know we need to keep it short tonight. So sports seasons are ending. So that's coming to the fall sports are coming to a close. We have a lot of fundraisers happening right now at the school, which is nice to see, particularly No Shave November, which is like really interesting because it's weird to see all your teachers like just growing beards and they post pictures about it, but it's really like interacting with oh god, it's really like students are really interacting with that, so that's really nice to see. Hannah can talk to you guys about the holiday bazaar, and then really quickly, me and my co-delegate had a really good meeting with Gloria, and that we definitely got a lot of productive things talked about and laid out on the table.
Yes, Holiday Bazaar is December 4th, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We are going to be putting banners around town, boards, social media advertising, but please spread the word as much as you can. We put so many hours into planning this, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And we have redesigned our layout so it is following COVID guidelines and restrictions. There's more space for vendors, one-way traffic, and designated eating areas, and then masks are required. So it's going to be a safe environment for everyone.
And we know how much work that is, so, and then to have to do that and modify it for a different environment, so.
Yeah, I pour my heart and soul into this.
Well, thanks for doing it, and we'll make sure to get out there. Hopefully everybody can get out there, and it's always fun, and just 1 year without it, right? Yeah, just 1 year without it, so it'll be good to have it back. Great, thank you. Any other updates from the students?
We have several comments for the mascot, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, we'll hold that, and you guys can relay those to us when we get to that.
Sorry, I thought of one more.
Yeah,
Oh,
please.
Was just gonna make a plug for the town DEI sent out that family survey.
Yep.
So anyone watching, just try to take a minute to fill that out. Should be in there. Oh, it was a billboard. District
Yeah, I'm trying to
email.
think how people got it
Yeah.
through Billboard. I think there was.
We had sent it out
Blackboard.
through
Blackboard
Blackboard
Connect.
email
Yeah,
as well too.
And for people who maybe aren't subscribed, I'm sure it's on the town.
It's available
DEI
on the town website as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, do try to take a moment to fill that out. It didn't take that long. It was like 5 minutes, right? I think that's what it. So. Laura.
Yeah, I thought of one other thing too, looking at the calendar. I just wanted to wish all of our students, staff, and community members who celebrate Hanukkah a happy Hanukkah. It's earlier this year. So happy Hanukkah to all who celebrate.
Happy Hanukkah indeed. Thank you. Okay. Well, that'll do it for informational updates. And we're going to move on to public comment a little bit early, but hopefully folks who want to comment are on. We have a few people online. I don't know if any of them have public comment. I don't know. Does anybody here have anything for public comment? Okay, and on Zoom, if you're on Zoom and you have something for public comment, including anything for pertaining to upcoming business later in the meeting. So if you have comment on the mascot, say, now would be the time to give us that comment. Seeing none, let's move on to business and the secondary schools improvement plans. We have Mr. Antonelli here in person, and I will bring in Mr. McElhenney and Mr. Hislop via Zoom.
No, I think Mr. Antonelli was deferring to Mr. McElhaney and Mr. Hislop to present first.
Okay.
Is that correct? Yeah. Yep.
He wants the ball after halftime.
That's right. He has.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you. All set?
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. And with that, you have the floor.
Well, thank you all for having us here tonight to present the 21-22 middle school improvement plans. Mr. McElhaney and I have been working closely over the past few months with our school advisory councils to update our school improvement plan so that there's a great deal of consistency between the two schools. A common thread that you'll see between both plans is the district-wide theme of building a better belonging. You'll see that our plans focus on 3 major priority areas this year: safety and operations. Number 2, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And number 3, social emotional learning. The first goal, safety and operations, is primarily an extension of health and safety procedures that were implemented during the pandemic. So in the interest of time tonight, I know you said we have a full agenda, so we're going to focus on just the second and third goals.
So with that, looking at the second and third goals, the first goal that I'll take a look at is Stony Brook. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm going to be focused on the first 3 strategies. If you were to look at the document, I assume you all have that in front of you.
We do.
We began work on these 3 strategies already. The opening day, we had an assembly, an all-school assembly, with the intention of creating belonging with our students. And what we did is we had them all join together outdoors, and we had groups of 12. I think we had around 57 to 60 groups that were all supported by a staff member, and we had different questions, and they were more getting to know the Stony Brook and kind of using 6th, 7th, and 8th graders and 8th graders having experience, and then kind of bringing along the younger kids. And so far from what we've heard was well received. We've actually heard teachers who have had interactions with some of the kids that they've had in those groups, and they were particularly, say, 8th grade teachers who saw 6th grade students somewhere else in the building. So it's really created a little bit more of that cohesiveness that we were looking for. Also, what we've done along those lines with that is the spirit advisory groups, and we've combined 3 teachers to create cross-grade groupings of students. And in these 3 advisories, we've used that for the Spirit Week, which we had a few weeks ago. It was actually a 6-day Spirit Week because we started it with the Breast Cancer Awareness Day on a Friday. But what that is, again, is a combination of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are getting to meet each other. And the intention is over the course of the year, we will have interactions between 30 to 40 students that they wouldn't necessarily get to meet or get to see, and so they will see them at different places throughout the building. One of the other residual effects of this is the teacher aspect, in that we started with a combination of teachers who wouldn't necessarily meet each other or cross each other's path, other than maybe in a teacher's room, maybe in a dinner, as if, you know, particular to tonight with they're having parent conferences. But otherwise, the way our building is set up, there's not a lot of interaction by grade. So we combo teachers who wouldn't necessarily see each other. We use that for the Cleese-Warren follow-up on back in October. We're going to use it again in December. Using that as the foundation of the groups with other faculty members with that combination of 3 teachers. Yeah, and so that's it on that first one. I'll pass it on to Tim.
So, although last year was a little bit different in terms of our progress with our school improvement plan, this was one area where we felt like we were able to make some good progress with DEI, and we're proud of that work. This year we're kind of expanding on that. We're supporting some of the programs that we were able to implement last year with students, such as our World of Difference, Parents Mediators, our Pride Alliance, our BIPOC groups. These are all student organizations run virtually that are now moving back to in-person meetings. So they're expanding their membership, they're incorporating new students from all 3 grades, new student leaders are being trained, and there are plans to implement the student and staff trainings throughout the year. We're making use of our midday advisory time to hold some of those meetings, and we're just continuing to build on that work that we did not only last year, but in prior years in this area with students. Adult learning is also a significant component of this goal. Like our elementary colleagues shared with you as they were presenting their plans, we're participating in a leadership team cultural proficiency course with Dr. Cleese-Warren. DEI is an agenda item in every faculty meeting, and it's the focus of our professional development this year. We're very fortunate that Dr. Chu and Dr. Cleary have given us, the building leadership, the opportunity to plan the school PD activities for the early release days this year, which is really exciting. So to that end, we're utilizing our panorama survey data. We're looking at the framework that Dr. Khalees Warnham is providing, and we're determining how we can build the staff capacity to meet the diverse needs of our students and staff. So in order to give staff a voice in this process, what we've done at Blanchard is establish a site-based committee to plan our PD days for the year. And it's a great group that represents all 3 grades. We're going to be meeting in just a week to plan the December professional development that we have coming up. Our last session in October was very well received. We broke off into small groups to have the conversations around Dr. Warnham's presentation, and they were led by our resident SEL experts, our counseling team, our school adjustment counselor, and our guidance counselor. So we're really looking forward to discussing how we can continue this work moving through the year.
All right, moving on to goal number 3, social emotional learning. I'm going to take a look and cite the 4th strategy, establishing a midday advisory and lunch combination. As you can kind of hear, as Tim and I talk, a lot of the things that we're talking about weave together. You mentioned Khalees Warnham. I spoke of Khalees Warnham. The midday advisory he's using in different ways. So one of the things we took away from last year's pandemic scheduling was that midday advisory, and our teachers felt as though that they really wanted to continue on with that this year to get a better feel of the value. They really felt strongly about keeping it embedded in the schedule and kind of splitting up the already existing advisories and using some of that time in the midday slot. So that's what we've decided to do. Tim and I have done it in a couple of slightly different ways, but we do have a midday and a morning advisory similar in both schools. We use this again to support students and create space in the day, building those relationship skills, supporting academic and organization, which is a big thing with middle schoolers. The peer interactions and working with others is also important in this time in a less structured environment. Most of the middle school things that we find ourselves helping students navigate occur in less structured environments. So this less structured time really gives them an opportunity to navigate some of these social relationships and some of these different cooperative activities with a teacher located within view, but still having that autonomy to kind of navigate that environment. So these have seemed to be well received so far. I know Tim is going to talk a little bit about assessing that, so I'll let him go on to the next one.
Thanks, Rick. So similar to what Mr. Mack discussed, we've established a time and learning committee at Blanchard to do the same thing. We're looking at how time is used comprehensively to meet the diverse student needs in the building. And we have a group that represents a cross-section of grades, departments, different roles, so that all stakeholders are included eventually. Parents, students, and all staff are going to be represented. We have a big task in front of us, but it seems very timely at this point where we've had some changes that we've needed to implement because of the pandemic and other things that we thought worked out pretty well, that we've continued this year, but we want to have the opportunity to be really thoughtful about gathering feedback and deciding how we want to move forward with some of those changes as they relate to the use of time in the building. So our group has been very active. This committee, we've scheduled 4 meetings for the fall, and we have 2 more coming up in December. And as I mentioned, the team is a really good cross-section of the entire building, and we leave each meeting with some homework, the good kind of homework. Our representatives hold meetings with their respective groups, whether it's a grade level or a content area department, to get feedback to bring back to our group. And at this point in the process, we're reflecting on how time is structured from the vantage point of a student who is in grade 6, 7, 8, some of the changes that Mr. Mack mentioned, the midday advisory, mask breaks, movement breaks, transitions. We're just looking at them very closely and trying to decipher what are our shared priorities. And what we're learning is that, from different vantage points, there are different challenges. So At the very least, we are already seeing that this is building an awareness for staff members who can gain some perspective about what the day looks like for other members of the school community. So our plan is to continue gathering that feedback from the staff and then present back out to the larger faculty by December, and then continue meeting through the spring, conducting some more data gathering, some surveys involving students and families, as I mentioned, and then if needed, making some recommendations for next year's schedule.
Okay, and circling back to the safety and security was the first goal. Tim and I really felt like this was really a carryover from last year under the conditions that we still exist in with the COVID regulations, CDC, DESE guidelines, that many of this we did carry over. Some simple pieces of it, you know, Tim and I have already run our ALICE trainings, a couple of ALICE trainings, one ALICE training in each building. SROs were invited and so forth. And you know, we're doing the mandatory fire drills and so forth, and we're managing this all under this umbrella of the pandemic. So we still have, excuse me, we still have similar guidelines that are channeling our vision with this goal, operation safety and security. The last piece is the card system. We have implemented the card access systems at our building. I believe it was around mid-October when that was completed. I think Tim has completed that at the Blanchard School. I know Mr. Barnes, my assistant principal, did an excellent job getting those cards printed and so forth, and was able to get those out to the staff, and they seem to be working. We haven't heard any negative feedback yet at all, and they're accessing the building as needed. No concerns about the time set on those cards and so forth. So, and you know, I know at the Stony Brook we had actually a controlled evacuation a couple weeks ago, so we've actually had to practice a little real life dismissal from school and arrive at our fire drill lines and kind of hold in place and wait for further information, and we worked with the fire department. So it was good to see that some of our protocols we have in place actually work in the immediacy of an emergency or semi-emergency. There was a unknown smell in the building, so we evacuated. So, you know, we've actually practiced it and actually executed it under real conditions. So so I'm happy to say that that's worked out that way. So Tim, unless you have something else, I think that's what we wanted to cover. The school committee, if you have any questions or thoughts or things you'd like to ask, we're open for questions.
Great, thank you so much. I bet we do. I bet we do have questions and thoughts.
I'll start.
Alicia.
Could you elaborate on, I think the document itself doesn't quite line up. I think the support for the implementation of research-based practices for behavioral crisis prevention and management, I'm guessing that probably lines up with the additional safety care certified and recertified. It's sort of out of whack on the page. Could you tell us how many staff are now safety care certified? And I ask because this came up in the CPAC meeting the other day as part of the crisis behavior prevention steps that the district is taking.
I can speak for Blanchard specifically. We are interested in getting more staff members trained. We have a trainer in our building. We're very fortunate. Our school psychologist is a trainer, and she's with us half-time, and she's currently out on leave. So we don't really have a full-time safety care trained member there, but we do have our assistant principal, Patty Demmons. She's safety care trained. She just recertified, and we have another teacher on staff. But over the years, with some staff turnover, we're feeling like that number's a little bit low. So if funding is available moving forward, we would really like to be able to train at least another staff member in safety care.
Right, Tim and I share the trainer, and she is out. And I'm going to say that, just off the top of my head, maximum of 4 individuals who would be safety care trained. And I could get you that number specifically.
Thank you.
Did you have, Laura?
I always love to see and we saw this with our elementary schools, the just level of coordination between our building leadership. And I think that's really good and evident again here tonight in the way that you two have been coordinating with each other and keeping in close collaboration. So I want to call that out and commend it. I think taking lessons from the pandemic and being thoughtful about that in terms of students' needs and trying this midday advisory. I know each building may be doing it slightly differently, but I think that's also really excellent to hear. I'll be curious to see, what else comes out of the discussions in the Time and Learning Committee at Blanchard. And the one thing that I had a question on, because I just wasn't familiar with it as a resource, was, and I think it was in the Blanchard plan, I don't know if Stony has something similar, a student center. So if you could tell us what's involved with that, Tim, and Rick, if there is something similar at Stony.
So Tim, just before you, so if you were to put the two plans side by side, you would notice that there are particular things that maybe aren't the same on both. But I actually had a side list because I said to Tim, I go, there's some things that you have that aren't necessarily in mine, and I kind of looked at it as, you could make this document, go to infinity with just what we do and so forth, and that was one of them. We have a student center that's existed for 6 or 7 years, and I believe Tim has brought that in as a new piece to his programming at the Blanchard. And what that is a transitional center, and it's for students who come back from hospitalizations or other situations to assist with transitions, and it's also on a day-to-day basis an area for emotional social support when there are different struggles that are happening throughout the day. So it's staffed by an individual who supports and works hand in hand with special education, but is an available staff member for that room, and occasionally it could be used for hours each day over a long period of time, or just periodically depending on an individual student's presentation. But it is really for the psychological and emotional support, or just say the emotional support at any given moment, and it can be accessed for half an hour, it can be accessed for a couple of hours. Students have received some of their learning in that environment because they're struggling with accessing in a large group. So it presents a lot of options, and so I'll intro it that way, and I'll just ask Tim to kind of answer the question as far as it added to your building. But that's one of those ones that I didn't put in ours because it's already existed, and so there isn't going to be equal exact things on both of our plans.
Thanks, Mr. Max, and he's spot on there. It's definitely newer for Blanchard. It was an addition to our school in 1920 when we started to align our PD with trauma-sensitive classrooms, and we looked at this area of need. Other schools had already had a student center in place, and we wanted to incorporate one into Blanchard. It's a tier 2 level of support. As Rick mentioned, it's a safe space for students who struggle to access the gen ed environment for a variety of reasons. It's a place that we see students utilize coping strategies, they de-escalate, sometimes just a quiet space to complete some schoolwork, check in with a trusted adult, with the goal of back to the classroom. A wide range of students were visiting it in 1920 before we were interrupted by the pandemic. Things from school avoidance, trauma, reentry from hospitalization, to support a gradual transition back into the classroom. It was very successful even in just 1 year. We saw a high number of students utilizing it, self-referring. We had a wonderful teaching assistant, Carrie Ann Wilkins, who was leading the program there as the teaching assistant, but under the guise of the guidance of our guidance department. And then when she moved on to become our academic coach, we were very fortunate this year, as we were planning to kind of reestablish and regroup. We hired a wonderful teaching assistant, very qualified with a counseling background, named Sherry Flanagan, and she's been very successful as well. We've met as a counseling and admin team, received quite a bit of guidance from Courtney Moran, to review our policies, practices, and kind of familiarize everyone with the student-centered model again, so that we can, fully implement that now that we're back to school full-time. It's a very, very valuable part of our school.
Thank you for that elaboration. That sounds like a fantastic resource available at both schools for our students. So thank you.
I'll just highlight just the tremendous social emotional focus that is so critical for those grade levels. I mean, I think we just know what a challenge those years can be, and I've seen how that's grown over the years at both schools, and it's just really nice to see the sheer number of things that you have in the plan, which doesn't even encompass everything that's going on. Tim, I know for years you've been talking about things like utilizing the space at Blanchard in creative ways and positive ways, and utilizing the schedule. I know that's been something that you've been really driving toward, and so to get to see you do some of these things is really nice. And so kudos for all that. I'm really also heartened by all the things that go towards building community, both with the students, with the staff. I mean, I think we know that especially now with the pandemic, how we've lost some of that community, and it's really important. But even after this is, we've recovered, it's going to be important going forward. So I think having the teacher community be more supportive and interactive, giving them the space and time to do that is great. And then I really liked at Stony Brook the cross-grade interactions with the students. I think that's really nice. And I was wondering if we could hear a little bit more about that from Mr. Mack. Like, what sorts of activities are the students doing when a sixth grader's in a group with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders? What sorts of things would they be engaged with?
Well, the initial rollout of this created a little bit of a stir, as you can imagine, with change. So, there was concern among staff about what am I going to do in that amount of time, and then when you really pared it down to the amount of time, it was roughly after announcements in the morning, 7:35, which ends around, say, 7:37 to 7:55. So it's a 15 to 18 minute window or so that the staff would be available to support these kids. So once the reality came of how long this was actually going to be, I actually went around, particularly on the days that we set this up. It was actually days 1 and 4. I mean, it's kind of meaningless to everybody, but and that coincided with some availability of other staff to join into those groups if they wanted to, because it was really just the advisory teachers who were involved in this, but other staff were invited to join in if they'd like, and we had several. And when you walked around, you could see group activities with people, students standing in circles, sharing different things. They had sets of questions, different get-to-know activities. So it really became, and we actually did something where we set up, I think it was a Google Doc, or even if it was just an email, to share some of the things that each teacher did so that other teachers could gain ideas. Because with everything, you get a range of support to, wow, this is extremely overwhelming, and wow, I can't wait to do this. This is going to be so awesome. And then it's everybody in between that. And so we really tried to help support the individuals who weren't sure what they were going to do, and then have the individuals who were like, hey, I've got, a bag full of tricks to do for 15 minutes with a set of individuals. So again, your question was specifics. And I'll can only speak to your specifics with generalities and say lots of get to know activities, whether it was, put yourself in alphabetical order, without using words, different types of activities, but just, I could come up with several that occurred, but, just name some, but they those specifics were just happening throughout the building. So,
Yep. That's
really what went on, because we were only talking about, again, a 15-minute window, not a very long time. Then when Spirit Week arrived, for 6 days they were in those same rooms for that 15 minutes, but it was more revolved around the Spirit Week, and it was in those days prior where we build up to that Spirit Week. So there was that planning and considering what are we going to do, because we rolled out what those days were going to be ahead of time. So then there was that pre-planning and let's come up with some ideas. And so they were sharing ideas, and you had sixth graders sharing ideas with eighth graders and vice versa, and then, you know, preparing for that week.
Great, perfect. No, that's exactly what I was looking for, get just a flavor of what it looked like, and that sounds great. I think, you know, like you said.
A lot of it was organic, you know,
Yeah.
just based on, you know, what kids would bring up at that time and conversations and so forth.
And that can be so meaningful, you know, for them to feel comfortable to be able to do that, and to be known by somebody who maybe they wouldn't have known them, you know, in other years, but now they've got these students who normally they wouldn't be interacting with. So I think that it just sounds so positive. I really appreciate it. Other questions, other comments? All right.
The last piece I'll just say,
Yeah,
if I can
please.
just add in,
Sure.
the last piece about advisory, those combinations is the piece where students will actually cross paths with several of their future teachers, so there's a familiarity when they change. Also, for the eighth grade teachers, for the sixth grade teachers, is seeing their eighth grade students who they had and getting to see them later on, which was always something that was pointed out of, gee, I see this kid on awards day and I hadn't got to see them for the last 2 years. Wow, it's amazing. So there's those little subtle things that are happening that you know, hard to kind of quantify, but we're hearing and popping up as we go through this.
Yep.
And we have 2 other spare weeks that are planned for February and I believe May.
Right. Yeah, more benefits, side benefits of it. That's great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. All the work that's being done there, and the details on the school improvement plans. Keep it up and come back anytime to let us know how things are going.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to
think they're gonna-
stick around as long as you.
I think they're going to stick around for a little bit, just
Yep.
in case we have questions with
Yeah.
another agenda
Yep.
item later. Thank
Exactly.
you, guys.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
And we will
Thank
move
you.
on. We'll move on to the WA school improvement plan. Good evening.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Busy time. First, I'd like to start off by applauding my colleagues, both middle school and elementary school. I'm blessed to have great colleagues that send great kids over to the high school. And I always said it starts at the elementary level through the middle school and then comes up to the high school. And again, very blessed to have great students at WA. So I want to thank the school council members for their contributions to the school improvement plan. And I also want to do a little shout out. We know the last 24 months have been very, very difficult. And there are several people that I just wanted to applaud. One, Julie Bedreau, Director of Digital Learning for the district. Stephanie Goslin is like, I'm going to use the term Oz a couple times tonight, but she's like Oz at Westford Academy. From theater arts to digital learning to saving Principal Antonelli, with computer technology issues at times. Mike Wells, Director of Technology for the system, but also for the town of Westford. And Kevin Murphy. These folks are always within a phone call. And when you think about going back over what we've been through, these folks were Oz. They were behind the scenes making a lot of things happen and supporting teachers and administrators throughout the pandemic. To be able to do what we did, and with the support of our administration and central office, I think it was pretty amazing. So I feel really good. I do say that, we heard tonight that, we have our plans in place to support social emotional learning. I think I mentioned before, maybe at this venue, I think really our kids are struggling a little bit maturity-wise, but I feel strongly about the resiliency of our students with academics. So I really feel like as though we may be a little bit behind, but we're going to catch up quite well and quite quickly. Shifting gears to our school improvement plan, as you know, a lot of our work last year was focused on our decennial visit with NEASC, New England Association of Schools and Colleges. And I'm happy to report, I'm thrilled to report, if you look at the end of your Westford Academy School Improvement Plan, there are 29 commendations and 4 recommendations from the accreditation, our decennial visit. I think that's pretty impressive. And I will be back to share more with you at a later date to walk you through the report. And as I said to my team, quite emotionally, one team meeting on a Tuesday morning, that we did all this during the middle of a pandemic, which was great. So I'm very proud of that. And this will result in a reaccreditation for Westford Academy come March. We should receive our letter. We just missed the deadline. The report didn't come back from the chair for October. It then has to go through the process at NEASC, but then we should receive our letter in March. We had 4 priorities to focus on. One, the vision of the graduate, and we've done a lot of great work with vision of the graduate, but the timing-wise is really good, because I know that Dr. Chu is pulling together his entry plan, and we also have a new strategic plan that's going to be taking place. So as we continue to work on this, because you don't lose sight of the work that you've done. In fact, last week I had a follow-up session with NEASC. I said, isn't the work all done? They said, oh no, the work's just beginning, because once you do the priorities, they kind of kick into gear with more work. And I said, oh, thank you very much. More work, just what we need. So vision of the graduates, so it'll be right in line with Dr. Chu and his vision for the Westford Public Schools. A written curriculum, which we established, we have in place using Understanding by Design, and that's a living document, needs to be updated, keep breathing. A learning management system, which is a great system using Google. And then collaborative planning for teachers and coordinators. So that was a lot of work to focus on top of other items that we had. As Principal McElhenney mentioned, last year's school improvement plan, was really focused on keeping buildings open, keeping buildings safe. And if you looked at that plan, I looked at it again as I brought into this year, entered this school year, there was a lot just focused on day-to-day operations and keeping everybody moving through. So it's good to get back to the work where we can actually look at how do we make get some accomplishments going on as we move forward. 2 recommendations that came from the visit was, 1, to expand a choice and voice, and more support for social and emotional learning, which you'll see is teased into the school improvement plan for Westford Academy. So if you look at goal number 1, you'll see that it's under curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and it's really focused on number 5, which is the DEI work that we're utilizing our training, as you heard from and Principal McElhenney with Dr. Khalees Warnham. And I want to thank Dr. Cleary and Dr. Chu for bringing Khalees here. She's been a phone call away for me in some certain circumstances, which has been very helpful. She has provided us some boots on the ground activities, I'd say, for December 2nd, which is coming up. A lot of this work is really hard, right? It's difficult, and principals are not experts in this work, right? So we need somebody to help us train our faculty. You want us bringing back that material. We spend Friday mornings together with Khalees. We want to take something back to our schools and be leaders at our schools. So this is really important. Khalees gave us some real boots on the ground activities based on feedback from Dr. Chu and Dr. Cleary, and also from administrators as we went through the training. So it's good because I feel empowered to do some things on December 2nd. Well, we want to engage in thoughtful conversations with students and staff, educate on how to handle difficult conversations, right? Difficult conversations are a major part of what we do, specifically at the high school level. And in the time that we're in right now in our world, they're even more difficult. So in order to empower our teachers to have those conversations, to embrace those conversations, they have to feel good about it, right? Dr. Cleary and I did an activity at one of the events, and I said to her, I just don't know sometimes if I'm saying the right thing. And she happened to focus on that at the meeting, and Dr. Warnham helped me get through that. Just say it. Ask me the question, how do I identify? And if you don't want to call a student out, take the student out after and say, how do you identify, right? You can do that. It may not be received by every student perfectly, but it's a way to open up the door and have some discussions, right? And then certainly under the work that Brian Rourke has done with Panorama, look at the data to what we're doing well, what we need to work on with diversity, equity, inclusion, which also lends itself to the social and emotional learning that we need to work on as well. So Principal Hislop focused on some of the underpinnings that are happening for social emotional. So we, as you know, have the Bridge program at WA. We've got alternative education program. We've got a similar room in room, actually room 125, where we have a social worker, regular ed, special education teacher that we're going to take a look at. And that's under goal number 3, where it talks about social and emotional learning, to make sure that we have an internal review that all of these things are providing support to our students, right? So many of our students are struggling right now. We want to make sure that the programs that are in place are being used efficiently and effectively, and just make sure that the students know where these places are and that they can get any support that they need during the school day. And that's one of the things that this could have a potential financial impact as we start to talk about budget and we review some of this. So I wanted to make sure that was under budget and operations as well as it could be tied to, it is tied to social and emotional well-being, right? But if we look at this and we examine this and we know there's some shortfalls somewhere, we will be bringing that back to you to say we may need additional support in this particular area. We're certainly going to involve Courtney Moran in this, Director of Pupil Services. She's been wonderful, very, very supportive of Westford Academy and these programs to make sure that we have everything in place. I feel like with 8 really, really good counselors, we have school social workers, a school psychologist, we've got an on-call guidance counselor, we've got a new Director of School Counseling, grades 9 through 12, that's bringing in a lot of new and fresh ideas. So we feel like we have a lot of good things in place, but we're still examining because we're really, really fresh into this new school year. I know we're first quarter in, but we still have work to do to make sure we keep our kids moving in the right direction. And then the last piece was in number 4, social and emotional. Again, one of the goals that came out of NEASC was support, maintain, and ensure growth and a commitment to SEL, which we certainly have in place. So that really just lends itself to the school improvement plan. One of the things that NEASC redesigned when they heard a lot of critical comments from school administrators and superintendents was that make it something useful, right? Make it a recommendation that we can bring back to our school improvement plan. Don't give us 40 recommendations. Give us 4 that we can accomplish. This one just slides right in, as well as the first one I pointed out with diversity, equity, and inclusion and such. So we feel like we've got a good plan in place. There are other things in here that I could certainly highlight. We've talked about, Chris Sanders and I talked at the last, we had a meeting about school elections or town elections and the later start time at Westford Academy. I'm still very, very focused on. Would love to have that happen and willing to commit as much time as possible on my end to help with that. So I'm dedicated to that. I want to get back into challenge success. We were going to do a survey that was supported by the trustees, but timing-wise, our seniors had left. We were doing a lot of other kinds of surveys. I didn't feel like it was a good commitment of the money, so I redeployed that money for other activities at Westford Academy, which the trustees gave me the opportunity to do. But challenge success is still a real live component of what we do at the high school. And I'm also happy to report that on a fiscal level, the facilities building is complete and should be turned over very, very shortly, which was a labor of love. Sounds weird about a facilities kind of thing, but it was something to see the building go up, supported by the town, supported by the Community Preservation Commission, which I thank very much. We got rid of the porta potties. We have a new concession stand. It just makes a first-class facility. So that's always something positive to report out, to say that our money's being put to good use and enhancing our school facility. So those are the things I wanted to report on tonight. I know you've got a full agenda, so I'm willing to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you. Questions or comments? Alicia?
I just want to comment that yet again we're seeing the word panorama come up, and when we have been doing our tours, the 2 things we hear the most are, oh no, the map. iReady. Thank you. iReady and panorama, iReady and panorama, over and over again. So I hope we can make room for those in the budget this year, because they are paying dividends in preventative care across the system. So.
And I feel like this is the first time we've talked about panorama in the context of DEI work. It's always sort of been the SEL. So I don't know if you or anybody else can shed light on like how that looks, you know, how does Panorama give us DEI feedback? I assume it's just the nature of the questions being asked. But
It is.
we haven't really talked about
Yeah,
in that
it is.
light.
And just quickly, I'll just say that one of the things that Brian Rourke has been able to do is he's been working with Panorama to help shape the different surveys that they have, you know, valid survey materials with, you know, questions that have been vetted, but there are options. So it's like if you want to explore engagement, if you want to explore different things, then they'll have a myriad of questions involved. And so there is an entire DEI aspect to the work. I mean, it is heavy SEL, but DEI is very much a part of that. And so he's been able to work with them to help kind of craft some more of the questions. And that data was very helpful as we've been partnering with the town DEI committee as well too. When they were drafting their initial survey that's out right now, we talked about the fact that we had already done some surveys for families and for students that talked about belonging, talked about connecting to school, and so that was something that is that we're kind of able to review all that data. But that's how.
Well, it does. The question it raises for me is then what do you do with the data, right? I mean, so it's great that we have the tool, but then what happens to the data? I'm sure some of it's sort of aggregate that gives you idea of trends, but I'm also guessing there's an opportunity for very particular or specific issues that maybe an individual has to also be raised. And we've talked about that with, I think with DEI specifically, about like what's the reporting system? How does somebody raise concerns?
Well,
I wonder if Panorama is one mechanism by which
Panorama
concerns can
itself
get
is
raised.
not an anonymous reporting aspect at all, right? Because it's like, so the students and the faculty specifically take the surveys, it is linked to them, and they know that, right? So one of the things that was helpful right away when we first started looking at it was that our based on the initial survey, if there were concerns that arose from the surveys, there were certain things that might screen individuals that then the guidance counselors would have them on their radar, so that sometimes it made sense because they were already aware of a concern. Sometimes it might be a new concern that then the guidance counselors were able to be proactive in just working with students to find out if there were additional supports that they could put in place. And it's actually been helpful for us as leaders, even with our staff, in the same way that we're able to then reach out if people have shared information that they want us to be aware of, that we can help support.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's key too, is Panorama is student and staff.
Yeah.
That we're getting both of those information streams at the same time, so.
Yeah.
I think it helps to guide conversations too, Chris, by looking at the data, can maybe steer some of where these conversations need to go.
Okay.
I think it would be a great idea at some point to have Brian Bork come in and do a quick presentation. And then we can show, some aggregate data to show and explain how we're doing, what we're doing to address some of those areas that need to be beefed up a bit.
That would be.
I did already ask him, and he's available in January. I said, we might be really busy in January, but it's already on his radar. We were talking about the other day, and I said, I think the school committee would really enjoy this.
And I would also just like to mention that Principal Antonelli doesn't have the benefit of showcasing how he collaborates with a person sitting next to him because we only
Right.
have one high school in town. However, so as he sort of alluded to in his opening remarks, he works so closely with the kindergarten through grade 8 principals, and it is nice when you see people side by side working as teams to see the horizontal alignment, but hopefully if you look through that particular lens, you are able to see the vertical alignment as well, and that's because of the team we have in place, and it's not just kind of the high school as a separate entity. Jim and his team really work closely with the others.
Only one high school for now. We're just not dividing high school.
Chris Sanders? Hey, Sanders.
No. We want to keep things lively.
No, I will say, Principal Antonelli was one of the first people who spoke up about being very excited to visit the elementary schools also when we started moving our principal meetings. And I think it's also been great to Dr. Cleary's point, just how all of the teams have kind of been able to talk with each other and see things through different lenses. It's been really beneficial.
We've been hearing about that on our tours you know,
Yeah.
people just talking about how valuable that's been, so that's really cool. Gloria?
I had a couple of things I was really curious to learn more about. The first one was, you mentioned expanding student voice and choice. And I know that was a NEASC recommendation. Perhaps it's early in that process, so I don't know if you have specifics at this point, but do you have ideas or possibilities of how that could be implemented, or what that process will look like to determine how we address that need?
Sure. To your point earlier, Gloria, when you're talking about stipends, right? So there's so many different things. It really is early in the conversation because these recommendations just came out. I will tell you the first way I think we're looking at this is through our exams, okay? And so what we've done is given teachers the opportunity to maybe change the way they're going to do their exams. So if they want to do a project now, they could do a project. I had 3 kids that have gone through college, okay? It's not just a paper and pencil test. There are paper and pencil tests, but it's a variety of things that these students are getting experiences on at the next level. And that's going to be life. Whatever you do, whether you're in the military or at a work site, you're going to get a variety of things that you're going to be assessed on, right? So that's what we want to do, expand that. Now, if we have 3 grade 9 English teachers, and each do their own different thing, okay? So they would have to agree upon, we're going to do a small written assignment and then maybe a project and a I don't know, some kind of presentation, right? So they would agree upon as a small unit to do that, because I couldn't have one teacher saying, I want a 6-page book report, I want a 100-page, 100 question test. We wanted similarity, so that's what we agreed upon. So now with that variety, that's a little bit of voice and choice. And my hope is that teachers are going to talk with students about that. What are you looking for, in an exam? And those kind of conversations happen because at the beginning of the year, oftentimes teachers will say, 2 of my expectations are negotiables, right? You got to be to class on time, and you got to say goodbye before the weekend, right? So those are just 2 expectations. Oftentimes they develop expectations about what the classes look like, right? And the kids are they're tougher on themselves and what the expectations are. So those are some ways that sometimes the voice and choice can play in. But right now, out of the gate, it would be more of what's happening with exams until we take a look at where are some gaps that we have, Gloria, that we could put other opportunities for voice and choice.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. The next question I was curious about, I know you said that it was kind of lumped under some of the finance concerns because there may be need for resources in this area, but this internal review, you mentioned that there are kind of a variety of resources currently available. There's the alternative education program, the bridge program, the Room 125 program, and if you could kind of explain kind of the distinctions between some of those and the types of students who might access those programs and how they would access them.
Sure.
And I also wasn't sure if any of those, or if there's another opportunity for students at Westford Academy to have something like the student centers that the middle school principals mentioned, that if a student was just having a rough day and needs to step out and get that space so that they're ready to go back into the classroom. I didn't know if that kind of resource is available and how that kind of fit into this umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, alternative education is students that primarily have some behavioral concerns, right? And have a tough time collaborating with their peers, perhaps, and need a more separate location with some individual instruction. Bridge program was originally designed for students coming back from hospitalizations. It was due to concussions, but we've also seen increase in anxiety, right, and stress and those kinds of things. So the Bridge program is also used for that, a student coming back for hospitalizations. Now, that's been on a hiatus, right, for a year. So the nice thing is that Lauren Clark, our new K to 12, she wouldn't want that, 9 through 12 counselor who came from Wachusett, worked with Brookline Public Schools, which we did as well. So we're bringing in somebody from Brookline through a grant that's helping us to look at some of this internal review. It's always good to have some eyes that come in. And it's also nice that Lauren has had a really successful program at Wachusett, and she really loves this program and knows what it can do, okay? On top of that, we do have that space, that student center, not really a student center, but it is another space for students in regular education in room 125. We brought in another social worker to work with those students as well who are having a tough time. We also have 8 guidance counselors, right? So guidance counselors are a huge part of that opportunity. And as I said earlier, there's never a time when somebody's not on call, right? So if it's lunchtime or whatever, there's an on-call guidance counselor. And we actually, up to just pre-pandemic, we were having students that were being trained to help. If you recall, we had talked about that. Wendy wanted to introduce that. So many of our things have just been interrupted, right? So many of our good things. We're just trying to get back on the tracks, right? So those are the things that we have with our internal reviews that we want to take a look at, make sure that they're all meeting the needs of all these different students, Gloria. So it's going to be administration, it's going to be an outside organization, it's going to be talking with folks from Wachusett, you know, folks from Brookline, where the bridge program originally started. So that's what we're going to do to try and figure out where are we missing something, right? Or is everything in place but just needs to be fine-tuned a little bit, and make sure we have coverage, right? So that's the other piece too. Along the way.
Well, and the last part I'd add is to make sure that students know how to access it, because I know we've had feedback from students over the years that there have been times that they maybe were struggling in the middle of the day and went down to the guidance office and their guidance counselor wasn't available and they weren't really sure what their options were. So they were kind of left in limbo that might be a student that is like, where do I maybe end up? And we know that sometimes those students end up in the nurse's office, even though it's not necessarily a medical need, just because they're looking for a safe place where they can be. So
it's an outstanding point, and we discussed it at our last school council meeting. And I said to Aditi Patti, I said, Aditi, help me to figure out where we reach students, right? It's not through the Principal's Friday email. It's not through Google Classroom. Is it on TikTok? Is it on Instagram? She said, Mr. Antonelli, I'll get back to you. I'll figure out the best way. So I'm going to be looking at you two, too, to figure this out. We're just trying to figure out what are they on, because it changes from day to day. Right. And so to your point, how do we get to them to say, this is what's available? You know, I said, what about Twitter? And they laughed at me the other night. So I just don't know. And so I'm going to rely on the students, because those are the ones that know where to get the information from.
Well, the Ghostwriter makes some great infographics. So I can see like a Ghostwriter infographic that says, you know, if you're having a tough day, here are like your 4 options.
Yep.
You know?
Well, I will note that. I meet with them.
They're really good
I set up a new plan to meet with them twice a month to answer questions before they write an article. And so I can bring that to them as maybe a way to get that out there. So that's a good piece of information to share with them.
If you're trying to reach me, yes, Twitter. You know I'm one of your biggest Twitter, right? Who retweets?
You're one of my 12 followers?
Better than 12.
Thank you, Chris.
I was just going to say, to follow on to the internal review, I just really appreciated how you included it under the fiscal goal. And that had jumped out at me, so it's a mark of a good presentation that you already addressed that, and I don't have to ask any questions about it. So thank you.
Wasn't quite. I know I'm being a hog, but I had 2 other things, and then I'll turn the floor over to everybody else. You mentioned later school start times. It is listed here as a question mark. Do students perform better with a later start time? I think the answer to that is yes. I think we've answered that question, so I hope that answer is yes in your mind as well. What do you see the process being at this point for evaluating that? What are your concerns? What are your thoughts about how do we take this from a question to a reality?
Well, I mean, being around here long enough to know that the trials and tribulations that this committee runs into, it comes down to finances. I mean, that's the bottom line. I truly believe, that's no question for me. There's no question for me. And I believe my optimum time at Westford Academy, if you can get me to 8:15, I'll send you all gift cards. All right? But you got to get me to 8:15 with the appropriate amount of busing. And 8:15 will finish me up at 2:30, you know, gets me off to do the activities in the afternoons. But I know the high hurdles that you guys have. I mean, I've sat on this committee. I've sat on this committee with Chris. We've talked about it. And I just know that I just want to get it done at this point, right? And I do believe that there will be challenge success. As said, students will not stay up later if you move the start times. I'm going to believe in them. They're a well-founded organization. They've been good to us, and I believe our kids have benefited from the program. So you got a believer here. We just got to get there, and I'll do whatever it takes to get there. But I know you have hurdles to get there financially.
I appreciate that clarification. I appreciate hearing the let's to put it out there, the goal of 815. If others are in support of that, we can make that happen. That's good to know. I'm seeing a head shakes from our students.
I think the students would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let's wait till Hannah's gone. And then yeah, exactly.
It's always the difficulty of advocating for change that you might not get to take advantage of.
Yeah.
But I hope you don't have any 8 a.m. classes next year.
Gloria, the other piece too is if you look at the dual county league, I mean, majority of the schools have already gone in that direction. So I mean, we're really lagging at this point. You know,
So
I mean, I was asked this question. Let's see, 15 years ago when I became principal, the person walked right down and said, when do we change the start times? So 15 years ago, that question was asked on the steps of the PAC.
The last one again, I mean, I know a lot of this work was interrupted and is getting restarted. I remember we had a presentation on challenge success and the potential changes, things like changes to GPA, changes to schedules. I seem to remember, I think that was a pre-pandemic presentation. So you mentioned that there's going to be a new group of students coming into that work. What is the timeline or process or kind of the topics that you see that group looking at?
We're going to be, again, ramping up on that. Right now, it's just been really getting everybody back in the building. And what Rick and Tim said about safety and security right now, making sure that students know how our school operates, right, on a daily basis. And that's been a significantly high hurdle for us. But getting back to that work, we're ready to get another subcommittee together. We have changed the schedule. So we have 5 classes a day. We just made an adjustment to the schedule. We adjusted so the last block of the day was a little bit shorter because students was said to us that it wasn't great, the last block of the day, so it was a long block, then another long block, so we added some time. We talked with Colleen Wallace. Colleen Wallace and the food services people worked with us. We massaged the time a little bit in the middle. I know it's not perfect. I know the classes are a little bit longer, but the morning classes being a little bit longer, the feedback I'm getting is that's okay. Kids are tired at the end of the day. Students are tired at the end of the day, but we made those adjustments. I wasn't going to wait till next year. I just said, let's make the adjustment second quarter. So now we can say we have 2 different time slots. Do we need to make an adjustment? Third quarter to see if it works. I already sent out my memo about no homework over the Thanksgiving Day break. That's out. No assessments on the money to get back. So those are well-founded, established guidelines for our teachers. But the committee work needs to get back, and we have a really nice list of accomplishments that we've done. Let's add to it.
No, thank you for, I know there was a lot of questions, but it really helped fill out, the plan here with some more detail and color, and that's super helpful. So
Sure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say on the schedule changes, I appreciate the willingness to work on that and to not wait. Well, we do that next year. I think now. I don't know what sort of feedback you've been getting that maybe people are like, can we just stick with one? I don't know, but to me, I like the willingness to try something and to be a little bit agile and play with that, and I know it takes some work to do. Like you said, food service and, there's a lot of parts to it. So just your willingness to do that, I think, is appreciated and to listen to the student feedback on that.
Definitely a team effort. It was students, staff, and then getting everybody on board. I mean, we've got a great food service department. Colleen does a terrific job, and we have the A team right now at Westford Academy. They're just terrific. They put out some great products.
I appreciate that you're looking at the NEASC recommendation as the voice and choice, really focusing on their academic experience, but the reality is that it's also their entire experience, and I think you are leaning into providing opportunities with the schedule, with the mascot discussion, with other aspects of the student's life that you really are trying to seek for more opportunities for their voice as well. And I think it is good that you're looking at taking that into the academic classroom experience as well. But I think they're speaking to both, and I think you are already doing part of that. So I think you should be happy about that, and you should all be proud. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right? Is that the official segue?
It could be the official segue unless there's any other questions.
Look at that. And almost right on schedule.
Almost.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming out, and we'll be talking to you soon here, so.
Shall I stay seated?
Around.
Yeah, do you want him to stay seated, or do you want him to?
Might as well.
Got plenty of water.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to the 810 agenda item, Westford Academy mascot recommendation. Do you want to start, or do you want to start with the policy subcommittee and their statement, or their resolution, I should say?
Actually, I would defer to the policy subcommittee and decide if they want to start with their statement. I mean, that was the different piece. I mean, we had talked about that. I guess I can put it in context, right? So last meeting, I recommended that that a resolution be drafted that removes the word gray from the mascot and continues to have the Westford Academy reimagine the image as well too, and to go through that process, which Mr. Antonelli had already outlined for us in his previous recommendation. The policy subcommittee did come up with a resolution. I know they brought it to the DEI team as well and got some additional feedback there, so that they might want to talk about that. We all got I think a really well-written editorial today from the ghostwriter, which I appreciated. Actually, this is the first time I ever had a journalistic organization endorse something that I was thinking about, and I'm proud that it was them, that they were the first ones to do that. I thought that was fantastic. I also did meet with the Dean's Council on Friday morning last week. It's 7 o'clock in the morning, and it reminded me again how early school started, because I hadn't experienced that in the last couple of months just in my new job. But it was great meeting with them, and I've received a few emails from students, all of which has been in support of this. I have not received feedback at this time from about not being in support of this.
And you pointed this out, but just to highlight that, there was discussion at the last meeting too. So anybody who's tuning in and you didn't, maybe you're looking for more discussion, do check out the video from WestfordCAT from last meeting to get the full conversation. As we often do, we're breaking up, it's something that we're going to vote on. We're breaking it up over 2 meetings to give ample time for discussion and community input on that. And with that, who from policy is going to start talking? I guess.
I suppose I will, because I was the one who voluntold us into drafting the resolution, given that we are the group of people that most likes to write things. So the policy subcommittee undertook just putting together a framework that we could discuss tonight for a resolution. We did take it to the DEI, and they did provide us with some feedback. We tweaked some things here and there, specifically making sure we called it the Westford Academy Grey Ghost, so that it was clear that we weren't talking about the other schools' mascots. Helpfully, Sharon Kennelly sent over some more language about the Spirit program, which we thought was a nice tie-in from our K-5 buildings up to the high school, sort of making it a more unified core value system. And what we have for you tonight is the basic framework, and we can discuss it if you'd like, if there's anything else you'd like to add to it. I know there were some questions about, if we adopt this tonight, what comes next? What is the process that will be undertaken? How will feedback be gathered from our middle and high schools, et cetera? We didn't necessarily want to put that into the resolution, because we do want to make sure that you're a little bit more agile, that we organic flow to this process, but those are questions that people do have about what comes next after this step. So if anyone else has anything they'd like to add.
The only thing I'd add to that is, I know current high school students may not be familiar with the term Spirit. I mean, that is the core value system that is currently being implemented in our K-5 schools, and I think we included that. Obviously, the acronym is spelled out. You can see the core values that it represents, but there is this recognition that this is a mascot, yes, for the high school, but it is a mascot also for our future students. I also really appreciated the addition, I'm not sure where this happened in the process, maybe at school DEI, of including the middle schoolers in this in this decision, and I think that's a really thoughtful and forward-thinking way to view that this is your current mascot and their future mascot.
So the benefit of the DEI this year is that we have the entire leadership team sitting with the DEI, so we were able to bring this to not just the high school principal, but we also had middle school principals sitting with us, middle school and high school and elementary staff, so that was added at that point, yes.
I will say the initial thought, I mean, we had talked about talking with families of younger students and younger students as well too, but the initial thought of really including the middle school, a middle school student reached out to Principal Antonelli and said, hey, I have this idea, would you consider allowing a future student? And he said, hey, I don't know where we're going with this right now, but I think it's a great idea, we'd love to do that, and we'd love to include people who want to participate. So again, I think Jim did a nice job with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would just add, kind of broaden out to the whole change. Change is the word here, and change is really hard. And I just want to acknowledge that for just the community, for our students, for our staff and administrators. You know, there's been talk of tradition, and I think it's really important to respect tradition and uphold it when it's a positive community, you know, a community bind that, or tie that binds us. And I think in this case, the sense is that we want to hold on to as much tradition as we can, but also look at when tradition is harming folks. And that's when tradition, you have to look at it differently. And so I think that's where we're at with that. And but like I said, change is hard. And one reaction when faced with change is to say, I don't understand why we need this. This isn't a problem, right? I mean, we do that. That's what, I mean, I've said that. Why does this have to be changed? But hopefully what we do is the next step is say, wait a second, is that true, or is it just that it's not a problem to me and it's not harming me? And I think that's the key moment where you step outside yourself and you look around and say, who else is this impacting in a way that I don't understand? And that's hard to do, but I think we're trying to do that as a community, and so I applaud everyone who's on this journey, and hopefully we have something that we can get behind and kind of move forward with, that everyone's proud of. And you know, the mascot last changed in 1959. Mascots don't have to last forever, right? There's you know, I don't think this one will last forever if I had to guess, but regardless, I hope they look back, you know, to 2021 as the year that they really took a real positive step forward for the community. And unlike 1959, there will be like countless internet like archive things of the discussion, so there will be no question about what we were thinking.
They'll be like, what is this outdated internet thing? Because it's just like an instant, you know, hologram of information
there you
that
go.
people get.
Yeah, Valerie.
Well, first, to Alicia's point, are we prepared to talk about any next steps tonight, or is this what kind of next timeline people would expect an update on?
I mean, I would say, and I mean, Mr. Antonelli had already prepared when with his original recommendation, the next steps, which I think are still, from my vantage point, still seem to be appropriate. Do you feel like it's something that, as far as moving forward and trying to and vote and come up with a decision on a new image, what type of timeline might you imagine?
Well, first of all, I think, you know, to look at the stakeholders that would be involved, like through the DEI discussions that we've had, I've picked up a few things since my original recommendation. I think the middle school principals, assistant principals perhaps should be involved. What I heard over at the last DEI meeting is that a vote for the secondary students to be involved with this, so grades 6 through 12 I think would be appropriate. I'd like to have a couple of community members on the committee. I'd like to have some alumni on the committee, and I'd like to have some faculty, middle school and high school. I'm not talking 40 people, I'm talking a committee of probably 12. And then we would put something together that we would distribute through newsletters and solicit images. And then from there we would create some kind of survey where these images could go out to be selected. And you know, I've already talked to several of the vendors within our school community of Westford to say, if this changes, you have to realize you've got to just delete everything else you have at this point, right? I mean, put it in an archive, put it on a, you know, put it up in the space they call, whatever it is, and save it. But we really want to focus on having one iteration of this ghost, right, to move forward with. And they've agreed upon that, whether it's Westford Education Foundation, who does the balloons, to CSA's graphics and stuff. They're all on board. In fact, one of the organizations actually came up with that idea, just saying, look, just give us the image you want. We just appreciate the work, and we're all sharing along the way. So if you give us the image, that's what will show up. And we'll be really, really clear with folks that, it's a WA, it's the word ghost, or it's this image, and that's it. If you void from there, we're not, I'd be telling those folks, those vendors, we're not paying for that product. We were very, very clear with this process, and that will be out there, right? So I think that would be the process, and I think I'd begin by soliciting some folks who would want to be part of the committee, have a conversation about what it looks like, what are our expectations utilizing the committee, and then hopefully by, I would say by March, we would be able to run some kind of survey, maybe earlier if it runs smoothly. Want to give people some time. There's some very artistic folks I've already seen. I've already had 3 images that have come in. One from a middle school that was great, that Dr. Chu referenced, and 2 from outside sources. So there are folks that are interested in this and want to help us to move whatever this ghost looks like moving forward. So, and I'm open to any other suggestions. I want to be open-minded with this process to make sure if I'm missing something, right? I've never done a logo change before, right? So I want to make sure if people have feedback, just email me. Say, Jim, I thought of this. Hey, great idea. Let's add that to the mix. Just want to be transparent about it. And in the voting process, just my hands are going to be way away from any of the voting process, right? It's going to be based on the students, and if we think of other folks, I think quite frankly the vote should be by the students 6 through 12 at this level, at this time. That would be my recommendation.
And just a reminder, we haven't voted yet, so we're talking suppositionally, like if the committee votes in a certain way.
Right.
And I would say too, and we haven't talked about this, but I would imagine, and this isn't, I would say not probably something we'll vote on, but is more in the implementation. But I would imagine there's a transition, there's a timeline, there's a process, and that there'll be a lot of grace for not everything happening right away, right? Like even once we have the new logo or whatever, we understand that there are a lot of places that this impacts them, right? I know I was talking to
I have Jeff Bunyan here with us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was talking to Athletic Director Jeff Bunyan the other day, and we were talking about that, how there's a number of things.
Yeah, there are.
And I think there'll be some understanding that not everything will come along right away. Jeff brought up the banners, hanging in the gym, which, you forget about. And just also a thank you to Jeff and to everyone involved on having I think some foresight on uniform choices and things leading up to this that have helped out tremendously, that we don't have as many places to change it as we might have, and I think that's really appreciated.
And that's a really good point, right, Chris? I mean, the vast majority of the stuff that you put out, Jeff, mostly has the WA logo as opposed to the Spectre or the image with the
I would say
cross,
18 to 24 months ago, I started the process where you've got the WA logo or the seal. Primarily, it's something that I latched onto. When people see the big yellow M for college, they know that that's Michigan, or the ND is Notre Dame. I want people to know when they see WA that it's Westford Academy. And I started this transition a while ago, so we haven't purchased anything new that has the name Gray Ghost or the image. So I'll just continue that transition, as Chris said, in that cycle over the committee votes. But there are several uniforms currently that say ghosts, so those wouldn't have to be touched right away. But as for banners, murals, anything to do with the athletic department, we can put something in place to transition that so it's done the right way.
So I'd like to suggest that when we were talking about celebrating the choice, if this is the choice that's made, celebrating the choice on the other side, making this part of the demarcation point between the two, especially the murals, because when we toured WA, we talked about there's a real student emotional attachment to some of the artwork that they've put on the walls over the years, and maybe there's a way for the committee to determine, for the committee that decides this, not us, to determine what we do about those murals and how maybe we make that part of that celebration process at the end. Maybe there's a new process for students to contribute to murals, et cetera. Because uniforms is one thing, but someone's artwork on the wall is a completely different story. And we have a lot of students who put a lot of heart and soul into those things. And I want to make sure that we're sensitive to that as we move forward as well.
I think Valerie and then Gloria.
I mean, I was just going to add to follow up on that discussion. I support the resolution, but I feel like we also have a responsibility to our taxpayers. So I was just kind of curious if you have some sort of ballpark or ceiling in mind for some of these changes that you see coming.
I have a spreadsheet just as far as our normal cycle of change. Ironically, we are coming up over the next 3 to 15 months of uniforms that are being cycled out that would be impacted. So that would happen normally. So it's not a huge financial impact. It really isn't. If we had had this discussion 3 years ago, it would have been more. But now just normal transition and wear and tear and uniform life, it's not as large as it really could be, because we started the transition a long time ago with the WA or the seal.
I will say, and I know you're probably worried whether I'm going to get upset with you if you throw a number at them or whatever. But I can see. But so what Jeff shared with me was, I think it was $23,000 in what you're talking about if we were to be getting new uniforms to replace other things as well.
If I was to replace, if we were to replace everything right now, it would be around $24,000.
Right.
But that doesn't, I still am waiting for a few more numbers to come in as far as some of our banners.
Yeah. So that's focusing on the uniforms specifically. Yeah.
But there are workarounds for if we, depending on what the decision is and what we needed to replace and look at and, be done the right way.
Some of these are combinations, like tops versus bottoms, right? I mean, so the top may have the gray ghosts on it, the bottoms could be reused, right? So, or, again, my suggestion is that we're just not, handing these out to the student athletes and say, take them home and, use them as a, just keep them for prosperity. I think we have to cycle these things through. I mean, the gray ghost name is not, if we choose to go with the resolution, it's not going to disappear overnight, right? So let's be fiscally responsible to utilize some of these things and just have them work their way out. They could be used at the JV level, the freshman level, which Jeff normally does. It's just a cycle, right? And then as we buy new uniforms, that would be how we'd focus on, with a WA, whatever the new ghost looked like, and the seal. That's how we'd focus with that. But we wouldn't have to do something drastic overnight. The mural piece, to your point, Alicia, I think an archive, if because there is a lot of beautiful murals around the building. The kids do a lot of work on those. So I'm thinking, we have every yearbook that's stored in the library. Create an archive, like a yearbook with those pictures, so as we change them, and perhaps there's a ghost there now, if we go with the resolution, it's the new image of the new ghost, but we take a picture of the old ghost, right, and we save that. So students who did that could be recognized, it wouldn't just disappear with white paint going over it and putting the new ghost. So I think that would be the way that I'd want to approach it. We actually did a lot of that work when the building was being renovated. The contractor wanted to come in and wipe away a lot of our murals, and I said, you're not touching some of these murals. Some of them needed to go. But a couple of them were really, really good. And there's one I just picture outside the cafeteria it's colonial in nature, and it's been there since I was a student, right? And it's just something I felt that we needed to save. But I think a way to do this, if that shift is made, that we could archive that material.
That's a good idea. Gloria.
One of the things the resolution talked about is just continued healthy communication. So really, I love the idea of having this committee to talk and to share and to dive into some of these really details. And it sounds like you two have certainly put a lot of thought into how this could be implemented in both a respectful way and a fiscally responsible way. And we did start talking about, are there things we should put in this resolution about these details? And we don't want to micromanage that process. We want for our building leadership and the superintendent to be able to guide that process and shepherd us through that process. But we certainly are open if if there are questions, if you have concerns, and you want to discuss it again in an open forum, we're here. So let's come back, let's talk about it. I mean, this is a significant change for the community, and I think it is worth recognizing in this space that there are some that would have preferred no change, and there are some that would have preferred a more dramatic change. And I don't necessarily like the word compromise in this situation, because I don't think we're compromising anything. I think this is a balanced solution. I think this is a balanced approach that allows the entire community to celebrate the kind of a very unique mascot and to move forward together in a way that everyone can celebrate what it means to be a ghost. So I think anything we can do to help support that process, anything we can help to do to support, to make this a positive celebratory change for everyone, please let us know.
Can we hear from our students?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing I think of is that the students take pride in being unique. And, you know, we're not Westford High School, we're the academy, and we're not, you know, the Eagles, we're the ghosts. And when we go to the football games, it's the haunted house, and we have the ghost writer, and, you know, this is part of our identity as a community. But I think with that, we don't want our identity as a community to be anything that's impacting members of our community negatively. So I think part of this celebration is us celebrating that we as a community can come together to take steps towards acceptance and embracing all of our members of the community. So I think this decision, we can still be the ghosts without being the gray ghosts, and we can still be the ghosts with embracing everyone and being an accepting environment, and taking back that narrative, what it means to be a ghost, what the ghost looks like, while still maintaining that sense of pride. And what was I just gonna say? I just lost my train of thought.
That was well said, though.
That was very well said.
Yeah.
Really well said.
I mean,
Thanks.
I was gonna say Hannah said that extremely well. I don't know that I could say it any better, but I think Westford has always prided itself on not only student voice, but the voice of the community. And I feel like this is a step in the right direction in terms of progress, and showing that we are like a growing town, and we are a town that's modernizing, and we care about our community a lot, but at the same time we care about what makes us unique, like she has said. Now, regarding what you had asked us to do to sort of collect student opinions, because these are our opinions, so Hannah and I had put out a post our student council Instagram, and we had advertised it a little bit, that if anyone had any opinions that they would like for you guys to know, we said that they could definitely send us an email. We linked our emails, we linked our Instagrams, so we got that out there. We did not get any responses. So our next resort is student council. I mean, they are the representatives for the student body, so I think what we ended up with was there is a good amount of confusion around, still there's a good amount of confusion. And student council, as a student representative body, we've tried to sort of point people to resources constantly, but I guess there is still a good amount of confusion within the student body. To name some questions, well, are the colors going to change? If we're taking out the word gray, does that mean gray is not a color? And then once we select the new mascot, see if this vote passes, will they start going on our new uniforms? And so people are really confused, and people didn't even know that, you know, we are doing, it is being proposed that we do two separate things, the contest and then also taking out the word gray. So there's just a good amount of confusion, but Mr. Antonelli and Hannah and I had sort of talked about at our meeting, if this vote passes, all the students watch the announcements every morning. That's one thing that we'll get through to the student body because it's not any social media, it's no emails. Everybody watches the announcements every morning. So even just like a couple-minute video clearing up what is happening, a very clear video, and obviously can be posted for the parents to see. I think we agreed that could possibly be a really good idea. And then also regarding, we want this welcoming of the new mascot, if this passes, to be a very warm welcome. We want it to be a very, like, a celebratory thing. And so we were also possibly thinking about, or I had suggested that student council being the student representative body, that is compiled of all the grades, possibly if we were to do like an unveiling of the new mascot, we could run that. And that would definitely boost a lot of morale and make it seem like, get the entire school involved. Because every student council event gets the entire school body involved. And so those were sort of the things that we had talked about and we've found over the weeks. I don't know whether you want to add more, but.
I think with every change, there's pushback.
Yes.
So, but the students, they're resilient. And if you give them something to rally behind, they will. And they'll adapt and they'll become fond of our new mascot. That's just what happens with change.
And
so I think now the biggest thing is giving clarity to our students and direction. So we put all of the information out there, why we changed it, what it's changing to, what our colors are going to be.
What the next steps are.
Exactly.
And the
clarity. You can go.
The last really quick thing I wanted to say was, while there was confusion, we didn't, at least I didn't receive any negative feedback. There was confusion, but there wasn't any negative feedback behind it. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
And I think some of those things, you're right, I think we can clear up some of that in announcements, right, whatever the decision is, and then some of those questions have been answered in terms of the uniforms, and there hasn't been a discussion throughout any of this about changing the colors. That hasn't been part of it.
Yes.
It's always been that we would keep the maroon and gray colors. Yeah.
Yep.
But we can help clarify that.
I was just gonna say, I certainly hope that WestfordCAT is picking up everything with their shared mic over there, because I don't know that any of us can say it.
It was good.
Than you both
Thank
did.
you. Thank you both.
Yes, thank you.
And I love the idea of a video that not only would play during announcements, but could be shared more broadly, because I think it could be good for the community to hear sort of the facts on this. I love the idea of an unveiling. Maybe we'll have an embodiment of the mascot, and I think if we do, Sean would like to be inside of it. But for budget reasons, if the new mascot could just be that real simple ghost with like two little eyes, like a sheep, that would be good for budget, because I have a sheep that we could use.
Okay, let's not. Yeah.
No. Okay. Sorry.
They can. You can handle.
Yeah, we shouldn't be designing.
What you should probably move on this.
I'm just waiting for Chris to go ghosty McGhostface. I mean,
Hey, I think we just named one of the plows.
And so we have a resolution, and I guess I would ask, do you feel like if we vote on the resolution, that's enough for you, like enough direction, enough support, and do you need any additional language in a motion to sort of charge?
No, I
the
don't believe so. I
move
believe that the
forward? Okay.
resolution, I think if you vote this resolution, then we have very clear direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Any other comments before I would entertain a motion? Now somebody should make a motion. No, we didn't make it yet.
No, we did not write a motion because I wasn't sure if there was going to be
Right.
changes. So I think what we decided was motion to approve the resolution to rebrand the Westford Academy Gray Ghosts to the Westford Academy Ghosts.
Point of clarification, should we just call it the motion to, and then what we have for a resolution in front of us, right? Because isn't that what we're
Motion
voting on?
to support the resolution.
Motion to support, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, so I will rescind that. See, this is the part of, we didn't write the resolution because we weren't sure what would be happening tonight. We didn't know if there would be changes, et cetera, so yes. So motion to support the resolution as is written.
I'll second.
Okay, Alicia with the motion, Sean with the second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the good conversation. Thanks, policy, for taking it really seriously and doing all the due diligence and going to DEI and everything. And thank your continued efforts on this. And I know it is a team effort, and it will continue. But I think we have something we can feel really good about.
Happy to report back as we go.
To the student rep's point about protocol, procedure and asking for input, right? We've done, I think with any big change, we've followed a really good process as a committee. It's certainly come up several times. I remember this on the agenda for my very first meeting last year, last July. So it shouldn't be anything new. It's come up. We've drew it out to 2 agendas for public comment. So.
Yeah, this was a process that really started from students who raised this issue, and it's been going on for years. I mean, I think the first reference I've heard raised goes back to like 2014, and possibly earlier. So, I mean, students have really been the ones who have raised this concern, and I appreciate all of the student voice and input tonight, and please pass that along to the student council, and thank you to the ghostwriter for their thoughtful editorial. I mean, I think this has been a really thoughtful and excellent process, so, and thank you both for all of your efforts and patience working through this, because like Chris said, change can sometimes be hard, but I hope this is a really positive one for the whole community.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Thank you. They're still on deck.
Yeah,
for
don't.
one more thing.
Oh boy.
And
comfortable. You're
Dean
with us now.
Dean Ware is here as well too to kind of help with some of this. And
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Mack and Mr. Hislop are still with us.
Yep.
Last meeting I had mentioned that we had concerns about overnight field trips, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Dr. Cleary, who was helpful in all of these conversations that we've been having. I just want to
Sure, yes.
let
This
you take over.
pertains mainly to only a couple of field trips this year at the middle school and high school levels, with the expectation that we're going back to almost normal this school year. We do understand that it's not normal. There are procedures in place to get our students back into the buildings and having a more typical education as compared to last year. However, the overnight field trips came up because we're at a point now, even though they were all approved, as to whether or not we want to proceed with them. And this is really in particular to 8th grade going to Washington, D.C., and seniors going to Disney. At this time, our recommendation is that, or I think the decision has been made, that we are not going to move forward with those 2 trips this year because of the pandemic. And there are so many logistical concerns in anticipating those types of trips. If students are away and they become symptomatic, who is going to monitor them? They would have to take a test. They are staying with students and roommates, and then how do we isolate each of those individuals? If a student is positive, then they would have to stay in that location and isolate, and then who would be staying with them? Would a parent be expected to fly? Would a staff member be expected to stay for 10 or so days beyond the symptoms? And putting students on airplanes right now, while we're working hard to get them into the schools and doing that safely, we just don't feel as though at this point it's a responsible decision to move forward. We did know that when we say we're going back to almost normal this year, there was that asterisk, and at this time we are choosing to not move forward with the DC trip in 8th grade and Disney for our senior class.
No, and that being said, in our discussion, the principals and the administrations in all the schools were then trying to be proactive now at this time to say, okay, so if we can't do that, then what can we do, right? So what because the concern really is what Dr. Clear was saying, is it's that overnight aspect. It's that being in a location that at this moment in time may or may not have different rules than we have, which could also There are things that they've already been talking about. These are not plans in stone, but it's just an idea as to the brainstorming and possibilities that they've been talking about. Can I throw that over to you, Bob?
Yeah.
Because I know
Yeah,
you were
thank
sharing
you.
some great ideas with me.
Well, you know, we haven't gone in 2 years, right? So the last 2 years, our kids lost a lot. These kids have had a great senior experience so far. I mean, they've done a lot of good things there. They're a great group. They're doing activities upon activities. Their participation at events has been great. So I don't think it's going to slow this class down. I think what we're going to do is keep having fun, and at the end, we'll bring some type of positive experience to them. You know, we right now we don't have answers for you, but the process is that we're going to wait till after the holiday and do some surveying with the students, get a voice on where they want to go, whether it's a beach day, whether it's a park day, whether it's a visit to somewhere. Let them have that choice to decide what they want to do. But I don't really think this will be a huge surprise. I think it's going to sting a little, but I think they're very fortunate because they've seen their peers and friends and family members lose a lot in the last 2 years. And I think this as a group collectively is very, they know they're very fortunate to have what they have right now. And Hannah, you can more than add to that if you feel, you know.
I think our senior experience has been amazing compared to what the grade above us and the grade above them had. And I think we are very grateful for everything that we've done this year. I mean, I just came from a 3v3 basketball tournament run by the class of 2022, and it's just so much fun. Our school is coming together this year, so I think people will be disappointed that we don't have Disney, but I don't think it's unexpected. I think a lot of the students did not think we were going to have Disney this year anyway, so.
And the idea being that it'll be multiple things that they'll be able to put together. So it kind of takes away that overnight potential quarantine, potential issues, but then people would have options to whether they do everything or they do some things, which I think would be helpful.
We've already mapped out our last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we're moving some things around to give us a little break with the graduation week being so busy and heavy. That we picked a couple dates that we're actually going to talk about tomorrow morning at admin. Just waiting for this meeting to proceed, and we can go from there. So these seniors will be okay.
Great.
Be okay. I know they respect your decision. They do.
And Mr. McElhaney and Mr. Hislop had brainstormed with their administration to talk about things that they might be able to consider that could help with. You know, it's not going to be the same as a trip to DC, but different things they could do. Are either one of you available to share some of those thoughts?
Sure. So we know that the DC trip is the stuff that middle school memories are made out of. It's a curriculum trip. It's also a social community building trip. So when we had to make this decision, we were approaching deadlines. We started the conversation with our 8th grade team, and they were very open and excited to talk about some local possibilities that could be memorable. And some of the things that they discussed were real fun activities like going to on a harbor cruise or Bodeborg, a trip that they missed out on last year in 7th grade, if that's an option. They also talked about a Boston historical scavenger hunt, visiting some local attractions like the State Capitol building or the U.S. Court at the time. And I know Mr. Mack talked to his staff as well, and they came up with some additional options.
Yeah, we did similar things, and our staff came up with different options. Tim and I have shared these together. The Holocaust Museum, Memorial in Boston, and Minuteman Museum, Edward Kennedy Museum, some different things. I will layer in that under the conditions that we're existing in right now and the different ebbs and flows of the pandemic, you know, some of these locations do have some restrictions and some limitations. So as much as they may be options, that could change as time goes on in a more restrictive way. So we're going to have to consider some of those things as the year progresses. as much as we'd like to replace the DC trip with some educational venues and some different things, they seem to have more restrictions. And we don't want to just replace the DC trip with, you know, Six Flags type of thing, because it's sort of counterintuitive to what the DC trip is all about with that educational component. So,
However,
some
one
of
of
the
the things,
education
Mr. Mack,
facilities do create, you know, some limitations. So.
Mr. Mack, let me interrupt for a second though, because I did want to say we did acknowledge though in the conversation that clearly the boat trip in DC is one of the highlights. So when both of the schools were talking about a Spirit, like the harbor cruise in Boston, we thought, oh, well, actually that's one of the things that the students talk about the most from when they go to DC is when the two schools come together on the boat and then they go down the river on the boat. So we were like, oh, actually that's actually a pretty interesting, fun opportunity that could still be explored locally, which is good. Any questions?
Questions from the committee?
Just clarity that this is not a vote.
It's not.
This
No,
is
that's true.
administration
No, it's not.
deciding.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
for your knowledge.
I know you don't need or are asking for a vote from us, but I certainly speak in support of this. I mean, this is a responsible decision. This, I'm sure, was a very difficult decision. I can already see that the brain trust is already in motion about alternatives and to make this time special for our students. Hannah, I thought what you said was absolutely perfect. I think that this class of 22 is resilient and they will find a way to have fun with alternatives. And I'm sure our middle school team is very creative and is going to find fantastic opportunities for our middle schoolers closer to home. What a benefit that we are in Massachusetts, which has such a wealth of wonderful historical opportunities. So I know you're not looking for our support, but I wanted to voice it. I think this is a really responsible choice and must have been a difficult decision to make. So thank you all for prioritizing student safety.
I'll echo that. Not an easy choice, but sounds like the right one, and appreciate everybody's good thoughts on this. And you know, out of loss sometimes comes some opportunity, and so there might be new traditions forged from this, things that we pick up that we like, that future classes might want to continue doing. So we'll look forward to hearing the details and hearing the experiences that the students have them going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I don't think you guys have to stick around now. I think we went through all your many agenda items, so.
Mr. Hislop and Mr.
As always, welcome
McElhaney
to stay virtually or in person, but also welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your evening and do your
We
homework.
still have a lot to do,
and,
though. We still have a lot to do.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know where to look.
Thank you.
Right.
We got people everywhere.
I like the fact that it'll also be behind you, so we can look.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm staring at people.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like
You are.
I feel like I'm staring at you.
I feel like if you think we're staring at you, it's because there is a screen behind you, so we're not staring right. Yeah, it was uncomfortable for a while there. But.
This way.
Oh, that's funny.
Both ways.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next
Are we
agenda
ready
item
to-
is the CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. Council. I knew it was council, and then I read committee, and I'm like, I gotta go with what's written, but.
Yeah, that's a hiccup.
Does this say committee?
If you want to maybe start with Kathy, I don't know.
Let's start with Kathy.
Okay.
Thank you. Kathy can come on up. I can. Oh wait. You take over, and I'll just hear from Laura. Do your thing.
I'll do my thing. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Kathy Healy-Norton, and I am here tonight representing the Coalition for CPAC Awareness in Massachusetts. This is a coalition that was founded by myself and Alicia Mallon, as well as Laurie McCarran from Chelmsford. And for the third year in a row, we have authored a proclamation that was signed by Governor Baker declaring November CPAC Awareness Month in Massachusetts. So we're very, very, very proud of that. This year, the icing on the cake, on Saturday night, we had the Zachem Bridge lit up in yellow in recognition of CPAC awareness. So throughout the state, we've been asking CPAC chairs to, and CPAC representatives to wear yellow and go before their school committees and mention that November is CPAC Awareness Month. I wish we picked a color I had more of in my wardrobe, but such is life. In addition to everything that's been going on this month, we are planning a CPAC Day on the Hill in April. And we could not have done any of this without the support of the school committee, as well as Representative Jim Arciero from Westford, and oh my God,
Tom Golden.
Tom Golden from Chelmsford, who have supported us every step of the way, taken our calls, got us connected with people at the State House, and it's just been a privilege to work with them. So I do have this proclamation, which I'm presenting to you. I don't know who wants to take it.
And we do have a copy for Courtney Moran for the bulletin board outside. Isn't it gorgeous?
And yes, I do have a copy for Courtney to hang in the office. And that's all I have to say.
This is great. Thank you. Congratulations. And thank you for, I know how much effort you put into this, into the advocacy work, and to get the word out, not just in this community, but statewide. And it hasn't gone unnoticed over the past few years.
And we actually, I should probably mention that we work closely with some representatives in New Hampshire who were trying to launch CPACs in New Hampshire, and they actually modeled their legal language after the Massachusetts law. And so we've been doing a lot of work supporting them, answering questions, explaining how a CPAC, what a CPAC is and what it should do.
Wow. So it'd be brand new for them.
Brand new for them. Yeah.
Wow. Great work.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Stuff. And yeah, I would have been out of luck with the yellow. Like I saw the photos on Facebook, and I know Jim had a shirt with like maybe a little bit of yellow, and I'm like, I would have just
like
been
one
out of
yellow
luck.
stripe.
Yeah.
I could have borrowed from SpongeBob, but you know.
I do have a T-shirt. I have a T-shirt that I sleep in. That would have been my yellow shirt.
Great.
Ratty.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
CPAC Executive Board.
So I'm Eileen Tatro. My pronouns are she and they, and I am the chair of the Westford CPAC. And you heard a little bit about how this is CPAC Awareness Month. So from our past and many years chair, Kathy Healy Norton. So next slide, I think. Chris gets to move the slide. So so I have with me today Jill Atkins, who's my one of my co-vice chairs, and Melissa Mackey, who's the other chair. Catherine Steele Danton, who's our secretary treasurer, was not able to make it today, unfortunately. And we also wanted to call out that we do have a school committee liaison, Sean Kelly, who has been fantastic attending our presentations. And I put up there, and it's in the packet, our email, our new website, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and our Facebook page. All right, so quick agenda. We'll talk a little bit about what we are, or what the CPAC is, what we did last year, which included a first annual survey of students with special needs, or families of students with special needs, it should say, what we've done so far this year, and any questions. All right, go ahead. All right, so the CPAC is a state-mandated volunteer organization comprised of parents, guardians, and interested parties. We are an advisor to the school committee on anything that pertain to the education and safety of students with disabilities. That is why Sean is there, hanging out with us. We do meet regularly with school officials to talk about everything the district needs to know. And we're also a resource for families of children with special needs. If you want some more information, it's on the bottom of the slide. So our mission is to work for the understanding of, respect for, and support of all children with special needs in our community. And really, we're a fantastic network of families with special needs, everywhere from preschool through high school. We advise Courtney and Courtney Moran and Dr. Chu and all of you in anything dealing with our students. We can move on. We don't need to go through every word. All right, so what did we do last year, which was, a fun year? I'm going to hit the highlights. But summer was pretty intense, if you remember. We did have representatives who sat on various CPAC, sat on various subcommittees that Bill Olson had put together. We put together a return to school survey of our own to talk with our parents and find out the needs of our families. And we also shared information on the return to school plans. Next slide. And then we really got into it. We do several meetings a year. Everything was virtual last year. Most everything is virtual this year. And that also included not just our virtual coffee hour with Courtney Moran, but also focus groups with Mascot, as we were looking for a new superintendent, and we participated in quite a lot of that. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but a survey. Again, more of all of that. We just like to give you an idea. The one thing I do want to call out is that we had a virtual basic rights workshop, understanding the IEP. One of the requirements of the district and CPAC is that we provide at least one of these workshops each year. All right, so last year was the first year that we did a survey of families of students with special needs. It was done jointly with the Department of Office of Pupil Services. It's late. We really wanted to understand our successes and challenges, both within the district as well as with the CPAC, so that we could reflect on those things and maybe improve. So we did conduct that survey last year. It was held in December. It was sent out via the email mailing list, also via Facebook, and we did receive 93 responses, but I do want to call out that families were asked to submit one survey per student, so that may be, one family hitting a couple students in there, but I think it's fairly to say that about 80 families respond. So what did we hear? So general special education top concerns, communication, right? Always a very top concern with pretty much anything. But the communication between the schools and the families was not meeting expectations or needs, especially around student progress. And many parents and guardians said they felt uncomfortable advocating for their child. We had some COVID ones. I'm not going to go through them. They're not the same challenges this year. And also CPAC focused top concerns. A lot of it was really more, again, about opportunities to connect and be able to have, good discussions. Next slide. So the recommendations, kind of more further two-way communication, which, we continue to do. We had an open house just last week with Ms. Moran and Dr. Chu and Jen Traverso. We continued last year to remain involved with COVID committees through the year. We're still kind of working on this plan for parent support. The big issue is that we don't have a lot of volunteers, and unfortunately the board is unable to do everything itself. But it's still something that we're trying to do. Workshops, plan for future workshops. We'll talk a little bit about that more, and develop and run another survey, and the intent is that, yes, we will do that. All right, so what have we done so far? Okay, so we've had quite a lot going on this year. I think that the big things here is, it's already November, and we've had several meetings so far. We've met with Courtney Moran to talk about the concerns that we are hearing from families. And actually when Courtney and Dr. Chu and Jen Traverso visited with us last week, they addressed several of those challenges that came up. Courtney definitely focused on things like what's going on with dyslexia, because the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has changed things up and made things better. We also had a presentation from Kelly Shallon, who's the Director of Transition Services with NESCA. If you don't know anything about special education, transition planning is kind of one of these big surprises for a lot of parents as their children are growing older and they're trying to figure out what comes after high school, right? Is it college? Is it work? Is it, something else? And then, as I said, we had the open house. All right, so here's the really exciting stuff, okay? I'm so excited about this. So this has been in the works for a few years, but we finally were able to get together a new logo that was designed by a parent in our community, Suzanne Eaton, and we voted it in. And the thing that I love about this, first of all, you're going to notice it's not the maroon and gray. And the reason is that we want to show that we're a diverse population of students with special needs and families with special needs. Well, I know, you're so excited to move on. But on top of that, not every child is in district, right? Some of these students are not in Westford, even though they live in Westford. So we wanted to make sure that we reflected that in our logo and didn't just choose something that was specific to that. Also, the really cool stuff that I love about it is when I look at it, I see Abbott School. I see a very familiar school here. But also with this awesome person, a child in my mind, in between. But there's also houses on either end of that child. So it's that school and home community thing. Suzanne did it, she knocked it out of the park.
It's awesome. It's really
Yeah, she really, really did. And I love it. I get so excited every time I see this logo. We also launched a fantastic new website that Melissa created. So thank you very much, and definitely take some time to go take a look at that.
It does look great.
Yes.
It looks great.
All right, so what's next? Right, we did a lot, so we're done, right? No. So Tuesday the 7th, we actually have the Bureau of Special Education Appeals coming to present to us over Zoom. They're kind of where you go if there's mediation that needs to happen. I actually had the privilege of seeing them when I did a Federation for Children with Special Needs Parent Consulting Training Institute training last year, and I went, wow, it was really good information to have. In January, we're going to do our basic rights workshop. The vote from our membership was understanding the IEP again, so Claire Van Esquire is going to come back and speak to us about that. There's a February thing we'll get to in a minute. In March, we're bringing back the move-up fair for families of children transitioning within the school system. And that is really for families whose kids are kind of moving those schools, the 2 to 3, the 5 to 6, and the 8 to 9. But I think in the past we've usually said come a year early, like if your kid's in first, because we don't always have the population to do it every single year. So we will be recommending that again. But I'm really thrilled that Courtney has worked with us to put that together. I'm hoping we can do a CPAC social in April. We'll see, fingers crossed. And then we'll have an annual survey. We'll have our annual election come in May. And then, as I said, survey's going to come out. Dates to be determined. I know that there's tiered focus monitoring survey coming out, and I really don't want to stomp all over that. Because my surveys are awesome. No, I'm kidding. No, I really don't want to. I want to give everybody a little bit of a survey break. So we'll look at that early in the year. The cool thing that's missing here is February. Can you hit? So you thought I was excited before. Anybody who knows me knows that I am beyond thrilled. Courtney has funds that she was able to help us with to get a special guest speaker, and we are able via Zoom to bring in Dr. Ross Green. He is the founding director of Lives in the Balance, which is now based in Portland, Maine. He is the originator of collaborative and proactive solutions. It's also known as collaborative problem solving. but Dr. Stuart Ablin owns that name now down at MGH. There's a story, which is interesting, but anyway. He is the author of The Explosive Child, which is a fantastic book. That's how I found him. Tells you a little bit about us. The author of Lost at School and also Lost and Found. Lost at School was one of the best books I've read by him. And also Raising Human Beings, which is really meant for a more general population of anybody. And he really starts with kids do well if they can. And if they can't, then there's a problem that needs to be solved, and let's work together to solve it so that it is, something that's solved permanently, hopefully, and not, something that continues on and on and on. No kid wants to have bad behaviors. No kid wants to fail, right? It's just not, none of us do. So I'm really excited about that. I'm thrilled that he's going to come speak to us, even if it's virtually, and we will, with Courtney, work on how we are going to open that up, because it will be opened up to Westford families and Westford staff, and teachers and administrators and staff first. And then
Is it a
we'll go from
limited
there.
participation?
It is, because we only have like a 500-person Zoom license, so.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know many people who around the country who would sit in on this, so just to hear him speak, he's just fantastic. And I think that's it.
That's great stuff.
It's a very exciting year. Any questions?
So I don't have a question, but just a quick plug. Eileen, Jill, Melissa, and Catherine, they've put on a great meeting. It's this is my third meeting so far, and it's been they're wonderful and welcoming people, and they're great advocates for our community. So kudos.
Thank you.
I did have a question, but I have to remember what it was. So I'm going back to the presentation. Alicia.
So first of all, thank you. I've sat where you're sitting, and I want to remind the committee that 1, they're volunteers. 2, they're volunteers with children that may have complex needs. And 3, they have no money. They have zero money. Courtney's office is able to, when she can, and she's working with a super tight budget anyway, she's able to do things like a Mascot membership and the Ross Green seminar. This is a group of people who are working with smaller than shoestrings, I don't know what dental floss. And what they've been able to accomplish is nothing short of a miracle, and I'm so grateful for that. And I want to put a plug in at this table that if there's any way we in our budget processes can get them more funding, look what they can do with almost nothing. If we can help them more, that would be, I can't even imagine what we'd be able to do. And I am eternally grateful to Courtney and your office for being able to find whatever funding you can find for us to be able to do things like this. Because Ross Green was like, special education parents heard Ross Green and went, oh my God, you're kidding me. So I'm absolutely thrilled, and thank you again for everything you're doing. And if there's any way we can help them, let's figure out how to help them.
When he emailed me back, I was like, oh my God, you're killing me. It's like, I couldn't believe it. I've interacted with him before, but he also, by the way, if anybody saw the Kids We Lose that the Westford Education Foundation, is that them? Yeah. Put out 2 years ago, right before everything fell apart. He's behind that. That came out of him, and it's just really great stuff.
Yes, there are a lot of partnerships with the Parent Connection aren't happening anymore because the Westford Parent Connection is no longer operating in Westford, and we were able to sort of piggyback with them over the years, and we don't have that anymore. So,
I read The Explosive Child many years ago, and it was like, oh yeah. It's eye-opening in an oddly simple way, but just turns your whole perspective around. And I know it works out well because we have been doing collaborative problem-solving work within the district in the past couple of years, so it's a nice dovetail, even though it may be different branches, and I don't want to know the sordid story between.
I didn't want to know either, but I know.
I think you told me.
You totally did.
But in the end, it doesn't matter because the approaches and the philosophy, as far as I know, match up nicely, and it will work very synergistically with what we've already been talking about. And I hope we have more discussions around CPS, in the coming future. So thanks for bringing that. The questions, I remembered my questions. For parents who want to learn more, get involved, just a refresher, there is an email list, correct?
Yeah, there's a MailChimp email list. I think we have a link. We do have a link to it from our Facebook page. It's also on the website, and it's on our flyer, which I should probably get Courtney the final version if I haven't.
And it's in this presentation. Can somebody sign up there? There's an email address.
There's an email address.
There's a website link. It's on the website.
There's a web, yes.
Okay, so people can sign up there. I didn't know, but I don't think I knew about that list, so that's good to hear.
It's pretty new. We had to replace Yahoo groups, so.
Okay, gotcha. There's the Facebook page, which is really mostly announcements.
That is us announcing out, yes.
And then there's not CPAC related, but there's the other Facebook group that is more
Yes.
of a parent support group.
That's right.
For families with special needs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So those are ways people can interact and learn more.
Those
and get
are,
support.
and then our monthly meetings are, whether it's a workshop or a business meeting, or hopefully a social in April. Who knows? So, it might be outside freezing on the green, but.
Do it. And my other question, I don't remember what we've done in the past, but would you consider coming back in the spring? I don't remember if we've done, I feel like we've tended to do more like May, have you come to a May meeting, but.
We haven't, but by then we would hopefully have updated survey results, and I would love to present them when
that'd
we
be
have
great.
them.
Yeah, so like April or May or something, let's try to find a day where we can keep you up late.
Wait, I know I love it, so, because I
We're
have
gonna
to
put you
haul
on
my
the
kid
10
out of bed at 5:30 in the morning so she can go to WA.
Yeah,
Can I
Catherine.
just add in, to just be so encouraging of what CPAC really does. It opens a door, especially when you come to a new community, and the CPAC is the first step. Was the first step for me, and through that, I just have to shout. I mean, obviously to you guys, but to basically every person I have ever met who has been connected with CPAC. They're the most incredible, most intelligent, most passionate. They are the experts of the experts when it comes to everything, and it's such an awesome support. So for any families in Westford, I really, recommend you reach out, because the friendships you make and the support you get and the information you learn, it's incredible. So I really want to encourage people to find us on Facebook.
Anyone else?
Can I just add one thing? One thing I just want to say is, Eileen has totally done so much this year. I've done almost nothing because my life kind of exploded, and Melissa also with the website, that just phenomenal. But I also want to kind of give, kind of similar to what Catherine said, a shout out to just the whole CPAP community. Those parents, they're experts in special ed children. They know their own kids, but they learn so much because they have to about all the kids with similar needs. And they're such a great resource for the whole town. And so it's great to interact with them, and they just want you to know they're out there, and anybody that, has kids, like you're saying, has kids with special needs, if you haven't heard of the CPAC, get involved, because there's a whole group of parents, and not just us, that want to help and are a great resource. And Alicia and Kathy, we have huge shoes to fill following them, but it's a great community that the whole town can benefit from. So just want to add that.
Thanks, Jill. It is a great community, and thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Wading through all of other agenda items with us.
Do we think
With
Mr.
that,
Fox is still
yeah,
awake?
let's go see.
he
Should we wake him up? Should we yell at the microphone?
Alive.
Paul, I'm bringing you in.
Thanks, Jim.
Night, folks.
Hey, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out. And we're moving on to capital planning discussion. And we should be joined by our Director of Facilities, Paul Fox, momentarily.
You're probably wondering what time is it.
Is he with? Oh, he is with us. So good.
Is he coming? All right, that's good.
So, yeah, please.
Hello, welcome.
Let's.
Could be 9 o'clock dinner.
That's right. 8:55.
Everybody doing tonight?
And I have the presentation that was in the packet. Do you want me to pull that up right away?
Yeah, that would be perfect, and then I'm happy just to walk everyone through it and give everybody some little background where we are and what the next steps are going to look like.
Okay.
And no pressure, Mr. Fox, but you have already done this presentation once before because you did do it for the Capital Planning Committee, and you did an excellent job with it. But it doesn't need to be a 30-minute presentation as it was before, which I thought you did a great job with it then. But I feel like I'm going to just tell them right away that they probably can, kind of focus in on their questions. A lot of this stuff is information that they're already aware of too, because you have talked to us about these things. And just for people, the question historically, what's been happening is that the capital planning, the director of facilities in the schools would present to the capital planning committee, and then it would come and we'd share that information with the school committee. And at the last time we did this, one of the members asked Paul the question, hey, has the school committee already chimed in on this? And Paul said, well, that's what we do next, because that's historically what it's always been. And so we then talked about, okay, well, in the future, we'll bring it here first, even in presentation form, even though what you've had this year is you've had the benefit of walking through the buildings in different ways, talking with them. But there are some other things on here that you might not be aware. But I will stop there so that you can dive in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and thanks for the background on all of this. I can do this in 3 minutes. I know it's not quick, but we'll give it our best shot. So as mentioned, just going to run through a quick capital list that was presented, and I'll dive right into it. The first one is the central office feasibility study. I think everybody is aware that we're going to try to expand the scope of work on this to really look at some of the elementary schools, to obviously include the Millennium, for how we can best utilize our buildings within Westford Public Schools to come to a solution or resolution here for what the best path forward is for the Westford Public Schools systems to move with their buildings. So I will, please feel free, if you have any questions, please interrupt me. Otherwise, I will try to push through this.
Hey, Paul, if you don't mind, just briefly on that, how do we get such a big gap from 150 to 250,000 for that?
Well,
yeah, absolutely. And then I know Chris wants to speak to this too. I'm happy to, but initially we were talking about a number around 90 to 150, but that really just involved moving the Millennium to already almost predetermined location, whether it was going to be 63 Main Street or the Abbott Upper Field, and it was really just going to be a build type project. This one is going to be a little more all-encompassing, to include trying to understand the elementary school grade levels for how the demographics, space utilization, redistricting, and grade configuration could ultimately look if we apply different tactics to them to see if we can fit in the Millennium, the central office building, in one of those buildings. And so this one is definitely like I said, the scope of work has expanded. So the range of 150 was our low-end range to 250, which is our high-end range. And I know Chris is working on trying to narrow this down with a couple of other consultants that he's been in touch with.
Yeah, there are.
Shock for it a little bit, but we just wanted to initially let the Capital Planning Committee know that this was definitely going to be a larger number, but we were going to try to be conservative where we could. But we felt that at least showing the 250,000 was a priority of this, and it really wasn't balked upon by the Capital Planning Committee.
When we started talking about it and talking about the idea of including demographic studies, looking at a space utilization study, looking at how we might reuse some of our buildings and then find a place for administrative offices within one of the buildings potentially, all of those different things, when we talk with a couple of different companies that do this type of master planning, that's when they say, okay, well, it depends on what type of things you would include with it. And so we also have some, is it the DRA work, Paul, that was done previously for all of the town buildings, that if some of that might still be very valuable in terms of recommendation for work, some of it might be outdated, and so that would lean into whether the cost would be closer to 250 or the 150, but that's why the range is such.
And you have a good sense that, so you've preliminary conversations with consultants who do this. You have a sense of they get what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
If the scope is broadened, that we could come up with a nice recommendation design or whatever the result is, proposal that would meet a lot of those.
When I started just
questions.
exploring, like, what does this look like, I then did see that there were different companies that different school districts have worked with who have done this exact thing. So I specifically just had an informal conversation with somebody who I had worked with in another district who I knew had done this in Lexington, and I think did this part of it in Boston. And so he was able to give me an idea as to what that process looks like and the different things that one could expect. But that was just an informal conversation at that moment in time. And so we're looking to figure out if we can get this approval, then we'd be putting together the RFQ to, is that the right acronym? It is, correct?
Yes.
Is it P or Q?
RFP.
We'll probably go with Q, but to that point,
There we go.
The MSBA has often entertained projects where it's a school system looking at what they could do, how they could better utilize 2 buildings. Maybe it's a consolidation down to 1 or whatever. And this is no different than that. The only difference is that it's a central office we're talking about, trying to fit into one of these puzzle pieces here. So this is very common for these consultants, these designers, to work within school buildings with tasks such as the one that we're asking them here. So very comfortable with what the budget could ultimately be around. We definitely don't want to short sell ourselves, but at the same time, it's definitely our financial responsibility to be appropriate with taxpayers' dollars.
Okay, thanks. Gloria?
I know this is currently on list for annual town meeting capital requests for this spring, but there is also the possibility of ARPA funding. Of course, it's important to do this thoughtfully and to do this correctly, but this is also data that we really desperately need. So to inform the strategic plan, to inform your upcoming decisions, is there any chance that this could be funded through ARPA at an earlier date and this process could start earlier instead of waiting for the annual town meeting cycle?
I
don't think that it would be faster
on the ARPA request, but I will reach out to Dan O'Donnell and confirm if it is, and if it's not, I will see what I can do about making sure that it gets on there.
But we're still leading it through the capital process, because that's the avenue, whether it came out of that or whether it was then funded in ARPA. I don't necessarily think it would drastically change the timeline, but that's a good question.
Because and even if, the select board split that process into 2.
That's right.
So
Right.
even if it got funded through ARPA.
It wouldn't be this round. Right.
Really in the spring.
Right.
Do we know? Do we have dates on the 2nd? I don't remember.
I'm just hearing
That late? Oh, so it would be comparable. I just assumed it was more like February. Yeah,
Right.
which would give us, if it gives us 3 extra months, I would take that,
Especially if we're pushing, if town meeting is potentially pushed.
Right, if it's,
Right,
yeah, I'm
right.
sort of assuming that, yeah, okay.
We will not let that fall off our radar.
Correct.
I have a question, I'm gonna zoom in. This is Millennium I'm looking at here? Is that right?
Correct.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that white part is in fact bubble gum, correct? Just to underscore the importance. Oh, it's not, okay.
So Chris.
No, it's simply just the roof liner attachments, crack seal, plug seal, that are usually used as adhesives to combine that. But what you can really see when looking at there is the true trailers, it's the modulars that are put in place there. So it's, looking at it from a top view, it really shows, and you can see it inside too, how boxy everything is. It's funny looking at it aerially, you can still see it too.
Thanks. Alicia?
So I just wanted to flag that a couple years ago we did the 2-pronged town and school safety task force evaluations of one, but specifically for this, are physical buildings. And there was a lot of discussion about key card entry systems and whether or not you allowed the public into private, but school spaces. So as part of this discussion, I just wanted to flag that we're still looking at, if we're going to be putting central office staff and personnel inside a school building, what does that look like security-wise? I'm sure that's already on the agenda.
Yep.
But I would be remiss in not bringing it up because we did have such a full discussion about allowing the public into spaces with our students. So if a central office is going in, that's a whole other.
You would want it
know.
you'd want to have a dedicated entrance
Absolutely.
and different space. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions for Paul on this first item?
What?
I mean, it's a biggie. Yeah, Catherine.
Just roughly from when we start the study, how long does that actually take?
Well, it depends on if it led us towards an MSBA process, then that has a certain timeline as well too. So it really kind of depends on what the recommendations would be coming out of the feasibility study.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's years.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Multiple years.
That's definitely a fair answer. I would probably plan for a very conservative number of it being about 2 years before funding, identifying the funding source is really there. Yeah. Now, with that being said, if MSBA is really not an option for us, then I think it's going to be a town meeting vote, but I'm sure it's going to be something that's going to be reverse engineered to some degree.
Yeah. All right.
I've lost my internet connection.
Awesome.
Oh.
Do you have control of that, or?
too.
Oh, so we've lost Paul then.
Paul, are you with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
Somehow Paul's still here. You know
Paul's
what?
always
Because that's
here.
wired.
Right.
We're on
Oh.
Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we
Speaking of
can't.
getting a new building.
Yeah, so I'm
Thank you
not.
for
I'm not
demonstrating
projecting
that.
the slides anymore
Right.
because I lost that.
Okay, so
ability.
Paul, so we have you
We have them in the
because
packet, though.
you're hardwired in, but we don't have access to Wi-Fi, so we can't project the slides, which is okay. Can you just talk us through them? They have them. They had them access in their packet, so they at least have an idea of. I do have a hard
Certainly
copy.
can. I did just minimize it on my screen.
How would you download it?
That way I can go in order here.
Paul, so we're on the steam kettle.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, if you just want to shout them out, that'll work too.
Yeah.
So for the steam kettle, this one was one that has quickly risen as an issue. We just had a series of minor, small flooding that has happened, and it basically took place. There is a line that's illegally tapped inside of the Abbott Elementary School, and so this proposal is just to relocate the steam kettle that is in there, seal up that line, have the steam kettle then go through the grease trap and properly plumbed throughout our building systems that we have.
It was
So,
part of the. It was
it's
part of
just
the
a
concern
very
that
neat project
created the lunches.
that proposing. We've continued to narrow it down. The good news is that each meeting that I have about this, the cost that we could be asking the town for goes down considerably each time. So I'm hoping that trend continues on forward.
I just reminded them, Paul, that this was one of the causes that Abbott had to become like the pizza school for a little while at the beginning of the year and needed to have a couple of times when the kitchen was not usable because of the flood.
My 5th grader was not complaining.
No, the kids didn't really seem to be upset about it.
School anytime.
It was the pizza school, yeah.
Plus one.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple 5th graders tipped me the other day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So then next would be the Miller replacement.
Perfect. So we're starting to approach end of life traditionally for commercial freezers and refrigerators throughout a lot of our buildings. Fortunately for us, they have a 20-year life expectancy. However, quite often so, these freezers and refrigerators last much, much longer. So although I can say that it has reached end of life, I'm disappointed because this is the earliest that we typically replace freezers and refrigerators. We do have a quote for about $72,000. We threw on some contingency on it, and this is at the Miller School. I would like to note that we are pretty confident that the freezer and the refrigerator's walls and panels were installed backwards, and unfortunately that is a pretty common thing. for these types of installations. But,
Which is a strange
due to that,
sentence.
in some regions, there's been excessive condensation, which has caused us really just to have the need to replace these units.
Can I
I
ask?
think that would be something that the freezer industry had mastered.
Yeah, you'd think that they would write front and back on
They
it,
figured out the
right?
inside and
That's
outside
right.
of their freezers.
Do we have any like fallback warranties? I have no idea.
Not 20 years old, not when it's out of life now. You may have had options right in the beginning, but it would have been, it's tough because it is such a well-insulated material. At the same time, it does the condensation issues that you start creeping up on that show you that that's what it was.
All right, the platform lift would be next at Abbott.
Yep, I do have it up, so yeah, I'll keep running through. So incline platform lift, we have basically identified all areas of ADA compliance through internally in our school spaces. These are the last two, the last one that really we're aware of. And this would be a platform lift located at the Abbott to access the gymatorium stage there. And this is an urgency. In hindsight, I wish we really truly identified this and brought this forward. It's a special town meeting. Unfortunately, my time frame really didn't align here with what the outcome and expectations were. So I am a little behind on this. I have brought this forward to Capital Planning Committee, but in reality, we're going to be paying for this either out of operational costs or through ARPA funds. We've sought funding through that mechanism as well.
Yeah, this is something that we need to move on.
Yeah, I think that this will make it there. However, due to the size of the project and my obligations to speak with Permanent Town Building Committee and as well as the Energy Committee for any project over $50,000, this was still the proper avenue.
And it will look like the picture on the left bottom, and it will go on the stairs on the picture on the right bottom?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
And it will fold up against the wall, so there won't be any issues. It is an emergency exit stairwell, as you can see, but it still won't be any issues. It'll be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Moving on to slide number 6, the mail courier vehicle. You can see 3 pictures there. 2 on the right are what the current use of the vehicle is. The one on the left is a new proposal for Westford Public Schools' first electric vehicle that I'm aware of. And it's funny because about 7 years ago, the same request was brought forward to the Capital Planning Committee, and here we are. In looking back in the notes, Bill Olson's and Kathy Yoss' recommendation was to replace it again in 7 years. We actually made it 8 years, and here we are, a little bit more mileage, but we're at the point where it needs to be, we need a new vehicle. We put anywhere between roughly about 25,000 to 30,000 miles on it each year, and it's we just had a lot of repair issues, and unfortunately, it is truly the unsung hero. It's a critical vehicle. And when we're down without it, we reach out to Enterprise, which costs us like $650 a week to rent, and it's pretty difficult, and it's a poor operational thing. So moving forward, we should definitely replace this vehicle, save us a lot of operational costs, and it's certainly time to do so.
Well, and if it's electric, there's so little maintenance. I mean, that's the great thing. You don't have the engine wear and tear and overhaul that you really do with I mean, other things may go anyway in 7 years, but the maintenance wise, it's going to be great.
And we have those very convenient new charging stations.
That's right. We've got the charging
right
stations
outside
conveniently,
the building.
in Millennium and WA. Is that vehicle right sized for what it does?
Yeah,
It's
so
carrying
we
cargo
actually talked
at
to the
times.
district mail courier and listened to his recommendations. There is a small, medium, and large one. This one is the large one, which is designed for somebody just to be able to stand right up in it by either entering through the side or through the back 2 doors. We'll be putting shelves on it to help carry mail around, but also one of the biggest purposes, it's too bad it's just labeled as mail courier, but we do a ton of food transportation with this vehicle to help the kitchen operations help offset some of their costs with the bulk orders that they order. So this is certainly the right vehicle. It will be loaded at a lot of the times.
I mean, it's just a thought of changing the title of the slide to be more inclusive of its like all-purpose nature. Because that was my question, was like, how much mail are we generating? You know, like in district. But
that's true.
But that's really helpful to hear that this van is, you know, called into duty for a number of different things that maybe we want to like highlight that.
Certainly. I can absolutely work on that. Yep.
And then the last
All right,
one.
moving on to slide number 7, regarding the truck with plow. This has been brought forward to this committee specifically 2 times in the past, and the capital planning committee 2 times in the past, in which we have always received the approvals that we needed. But due to COVID reasons, the town did request if we could wait, and so we did. We waited. It's funny because this slide is now 2-3 years old, and I did just take a new updated picture of this vehicle, and it's amazing what 2 years worth of deterioration adds to it. I wish that was still our current truck, but it sadly is not. So we're in desperate needs, and I definitely anticipate that, you know, this is the beginning of it, and we'll be coming back to the capital planning committee in the very near future, potentially next year, asking for some more support for our vehicles. The next couple slides are more building related, but I would like to point out slide number 10, which is a work order system. I have talked to the DPW and Parks and Rec directors. This is something that we're both we're all very eager to move forward with. Our goal is to get a system onboarded by May 1st with a July 1st live date, with a true then September 1st live date for Westford Public School System, to all of its, you know, internal stakeholders, whether they be principals, staff members, teachers, anybody else, to really work on a way to ultimately submitting tickets to really help identify priorities, and really hope to create some efficiencies within our maintenance department and the custodians with all their great work that they do. So it'll help us to recognize them, and it'll help us to pick out on some flaws and make better educated decisions well. Moving on to slide 13, 14, and 15, as well as 16. Just a quick couple of updates for things that are coming down the pipe. We talked about the energy performance contract, and we continue to evolve for our work moving with this. Really excited to see the progress that's been made. We hope to have a consultant on sometime in the very near future, evaluating our buildings this winter, to hopefully help make some recommendations. This alone, the anticipation of hopefully a positive vote at town meeting, has what's, you know, a major factor that's really dictates a lot of our capital planning, knowing that hopefully a lot of these items that I would typically be asking for and requesting will be addressed by this project. Slide 14, a quick MSBA update on October 27th. The Westford Public School System, I think that you guys are all already aware of this, did receive a favorable vote. So we have been introduced. We'll actually be on in 2 weeks on the next agenda, asking for a secondary vote to allow us to continue on with the process of with the MSBA. And then 2 items that have been brought forward to the Capital Planning Committee to include, again, the Robinson roof is in need of attention, as well as just bringing generalized attention to the Norman Day School and the Robinson School. You know, with a little side character about, you know, even the Abbott School, we do have 3 buildings that are 60 years of major concerns regarding the HVAC system, mechanical, electrical, plumbing that you all have heard me talk about in the past. So these are really, you know, important reminders to these committees to know that these things will hopefully be acted upon in the near future. So that was my presentation that I gave. As Chris mentioned, I really hope to be doing this in advance next year. And please know any comments, recommendations, I'm happy to make. Those that have already been asked, I'll make, you know, moving forward. It's definitely not too late. And if there's any other guidance, recommendations, or different expectations that this committee sets forth, please know that I will make sure that the Capital Planning Committee is aware of them, and we will adjust accordingly. So thank you all for your time. Happy to answer any other questions.
I will just quickly say that some of these things, because like you already came and did the energy performance presentation for us, right? And we've been talking about the change in the feasibility study since this summer. So there's really only a couple of things like the steam kettle and the refrigerator and things that really might be new things that weren't necessarily on the radar. So just for people who are, if people are paying attention at this time of the evening, that even though he didn't do this presentation before you earlier, there's actually aspects of this that Paul, you've been sharing along the way, which I think is super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, you've been at several
Multiple
of our
meetings,
meetings
right.
this fall, so we really appreciate that, like keeping in the loop with you, and this was a great presentation. Alicia has a question.
Paul, you said that the stage at Abbott was the last ADA non-compliant thing that you thought you knew of. Has anything been discussed about the elevator at Day? I know that there was a problem with it a few years ago where a student's wheelchair was too heavy. It's essentially a cargo, a maintenance kind of elevator. It's not necessarily an elevator like you would think of at Abbott. So has the elevator at Day been assessed for a potential capital project at all? Or has it been assessed for ADA compliance at all?
Yeah, so, all right, good couple points here, I guess. In terms of compliance, everything is grandfathered in. There's nothing wrong with all our buildings. Really, the push from this is definitely from a sheer educational component of it being equitable to all of our students as a main driving force here. So do know that all of our buildings are 100% up to code, within compliance that they need to be. We just from an educational standpoint do have that obligation that is being sought after here. So when it comes to the day school has a limited occupancy, limited use elevator. It's called a LULA, I guess, limited use, limited occupancy, which is really designed only for one person to be using it at a time. So again, it's still a appropriate elevator to be had in there. With that said, it's certainly been an item that has been beyond earmarked as something that does need to be. It would be nice to have a larger elevator. So your short answer is it has made it on our 5-year capital plan. We haven't requested design funding for it. Instead, we have talked it through as one of the arguments for a bigger, more holistical approach to the day school. However, I'm certainly, if it's this committee's expectation to specifically identify that as an immediate need, then I can certainly, whether it's this year or next year, bring forth a capital project that would include both design and then the following town meeting construction funds to have something individually proposed over there. That space is too small for a regular sized elevator, passenger elevator, so it would have to be something where we are impacting quite a majority of the building space itself to potentially include
Access the second floor, so I wanted to check and see what the status was on that. So thank you.
I'm guessing.
Yes, and
go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, I was just going to make a quick comment. This is the first time that I was informed that an elevator failed to bring up a student. So I do want to fully understand that. And I can definitely look at very first thing is that there is a maximum load in there that's there. So I can try to understand better what that is, to try to understand what exactly our limitations are. But the elevator has passed all of its inspections to date. So very interesting. I don't know, I can't test or speak on behalf of that issue in the past. So I will look into that, and I'm happy to try to report back to some degree about that finding.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was raised to us, it's been almost 2 years now by Dr. Sardella on one of the tours.
Yep.
And the committee, we would probably just, the holistic approach makes sense, but defer to Dr. Sardella and Dr. Chu on if something becomes more urgent on that, but we'll see. Thank you.
Understood, thank you.
Any other questions for Paul? All right, I think we're gonna let you go with a big heap of gratitude for staying up with us once again, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon.
Absolutely, thank you all for your time. Hopefully that wasn't too much past 3 minutes.
It was perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you so much.
Paul.
Take care, bye.
Bye. Okay, our 9:10 item.
Right.
Right on time.
Yep.
COVID update.
So as you're all aware, the conferences that are all over now for tonight,
Yeah.
we made a decision on Friday based on information from Thursday that we wanted to transition them to be virtual. We met in the morning. I met with the leadership team and we talked it through. We talked it through with the principals as to whether logistically it would be something that parents would be able to switch to a virtual, keep their schedule and switch over to virtual. And the bigger thing being is that if that created a hardship for anybody, we wanted to make sure that they were able to reach out and reschedule altogether. The interesting thing when we're looking at our numbers is that our positive cases are not greater than they have been earlier, right? So we're looking at, it was 19 last week, there were 17 the week before. The week before it was down to 5, but then before that it was 12, 15, and 22. So it's like it's been in this sort of range. And when we were looking at collectively the number of positive cases that we had in September and October were both around, they were both 63 positive cases in each of those months with different numbers of close contacts. And right now in November, we're at about 46, I think is what it's at right now in November with a little bit of time left. So what changed is that there was a cluster because there were multiple cases in one classroom, okay? Which then impacted the number of close contacts. Plus, with more of the contacts being at the elementary level, there were more close contacts as well too. Out of the almost 250 people who have opted into the test and stay program, we've only had 3 result in a positive case. So we were having a conversation about this morning because we were talking about really, I know that people are concerned about the numbers, and one of the things we talked about as a leadership team, we were talking about the true benefits that the students are getting from being able to work in their small groups this year, from being able to sit at tables. Yes, they're wearing masks, but we're able to bring them closer together so that they can better communicate and understand each other. And so when we look at that data and when we look to see that the students who have been participating in the test and stay program, that the vast majority of them have been continuing to go through the mitigation strategies that we have in play and still remained negative, I think is very promising. So while yes, I think it can be initially alarming, and our focus is on the kids, and so their ability to stay in school and their ability to go to school, but what we decided was that the idea of just with too many things potentially happening in different families, it just didn't make sense to extend the conferences at this moment in time. So I know that there are some people who are upset about that. I did get a number of emails of people who were very happy that we made that decision as well too. But again, I apologize if it was inconvenience for anybody. We will find ways for people to, if they weren't able to keep their schedule either this evening or tomorrow, because it was tonight and then tomorrow morning is the delay. But so that's where we're at with our update. I kind of put them together, the testing and the COVID cases all together. Yeah.
Can I ask Dr. Chu, you were saying there about how kind of when you look at all the positive cases we've had the last couple of weeks and months, it generally has been in and around the same. But the school close contacts jumped this last week. So to me that reads that something different maybe happened or a breakdown in protocols or something, because it's kind of trying to understand the picture of what has happened in this last week that has resulted in, 148 close contacts. That's dramatic.
It is.
And so, I'd like to kind of see if you can speak to what do you think is lending itself, because it clearly didn't happen any other week.
Right. So At the very beginning of the year, we had a scenario where one of our youngest groups had a positive case in which it had a similar reaction.
Mhm.
However, it was only one case. And so it happened very close to the beginning of the year. What we saw this last week was that that happened more times within our youngest learners' classrooms, right? So that it impacted more of our elementary students. And because, like I'd started to say, because we had a couple of different clusters in different schools, and the cluster was defined by whenever there was more than 2 cases in one classroom, that then it expanded the contact tracing. And I will also say it can be a difference if the positive case is a student or if the positive case is an adult who might be interacting with more of those students than the student was. So that can also have an impact as to the students that might have to be identified as a close contact.
So when you say about we're kind of talking about maybe more some of the specialists or something that
It
they're
could
in a
be, and
different environment, I suppose, as to
There,
the general
there
classroom.
are different variables such as that would lead to a different scenario, yes.
And we tend to find that the younger the students, the higher amount of close contacts there tend to be.
Right.
Has there been any discussion since we saw these numbers, though, about trying to look at other mitigating factors that we could possibly do? Because I'm just very concerned that we're on the week of Thanksgiving, so potentially in the next week or two, numbers may spike again. I will be honest, I'm concerned that our poor nursing and the clinic are possibly struggling. I can't imagine what it must be like to administer 99 tests. And I'm also, I suppose, thinking that do we need to do something that's only temporary, in terms of trying to reduce the close contacts? With the vaccine now being available for 5 to 11-year-olds, potentially come January, we won't necessarily need to do test and stay for our younger kiddos because they will be vaccinated or have the opportunity. So
let me answer your
Yeah.
question, because yes, conversations have happened, right? So
Okay.
we had the conversation on Friday. It is Monday, right? So
Yeah.
this morning we met with we met with the director of our district coordinator for the test and stay, our head nurse, some of the other nurses, as well as the interim health director for the town and the town nurse. So we met this morning and we had some of these discussions. And so in both of those conversations, the conversation that we had on Friday with all the different principals, we were talking about, again, that the experience that our students are having in the classroom right now is vitally important. It's vitally important what they're able to do. The environments that we've been able to reestablish in the classrooms, the way in which the classrooms are organized, the youngest students being able to work at tables instead of desks that are separated from each other, being able to come together in their small learning groups, all of these different things that they're experiencing, which is actually helping to build the social emotional connections that they've lost, because that's some of the biggest challenges that we're seeing. It's not the academic loss, it's the actual social engagement that seems to be something that they're struggling with. So across the board, everybody was very concerned about the impact that we would have on that progress if we were to make additional changes outside of the masks. And that's why when I go back and I look at the data, yes, the close contacts have increased, but the fact that we haven't had more kids go from negative to positive, and we haven't had more increasing cases of in-school transmission, then what that's telling me is that the fact that there's more close contacts that will have to go through the test and stay program, I understand that in itself can be a hurdle, right? And that can be difficult for somebody, but that's allowing them to go to school, and that's allowing them to stay in school, so they're allowed to stay in this environment that we're finding is more beneficial for them. So we did have those conversations, and so we had talked about that, and we had talked about sort of the risk benefit, and what the data's telling me is that out of 250 kids who have participated in the test and stay program, only 3 have ended up coming in positive. Then that was telling me that what we're doing is correct. So we are having the conversation. I'm not ignoring that aspect of it. We're talking about it, and what we're saying is we don't think that changing something would be beneficial.
Because
Does that make sense?
the change would be, would we be willing to go to a more restrictive environment to get 3 cases of in-school transmission confirmed to 0, right? Because we know we've had 0 in the past, and that's the trade-off that you're
It's
talking about.
not just about the positive cases, though. How many families is that now we're having to get to millennium?
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
more
there's-
what we
there's
have to
obviously that
think
impact,
about
but-
is the
but
impact.
just to talk about the numbers and to make sure, like, I have the story, because sometimes you look at the graph and like, okay, I want to know the story. There's not really a spike of in-school close contacts. I mean, we've had 2 weeks of elevated, but we had, a week of 13 in-school close contacts, a week of 22, a week of 15, a week of 12. So it's been in the teens pretty steadily.
I think that
since September.
I think that's not accurate.
Okay.
Are you talking about?
Because I think the fact that the in-school, because at this point, once we started bringing test and stay into play, now granted, that is all of the students who performed tests that week. So it could be similar, but
that's what
I'm questioning whether the in-school close contacts is the same as the positive cases.
Okay, so this graph may not be accurate.
Because I feel like that
the
might have been.
166 is in school.
166 is total, 148 would be.
Oh, 140. Oh, so
that
this is
yellow
not.
bar should be way up.
That yellow
Where
bar
are you
is-
looking at 148? Where are you seeing 148? Am I looking at a different graph?
in the data table.
Oh, gotcha. Let's look at that. Let me go back. a
See, I
table.
went straight.
Yeah.
I'm the visual learner. I went straight to the
Yeah.
graph.
Yeah, I feel like this, for some reason, we might have to look at that. I feel like the graph might have gotten, when they added the test and stay column, I feel like it might have kicked column D out of the graph, so I feel like column D is grabbing column B again.
Right, but didn't update the color.
Yeah, that's
I
what it
feel
is.
like, so we'll talk about
If you
that.
go to the
Cheryl
previous
Carpenter
page,
did email saying that there's a problem with the WPS COVID positive sheet.
Yep.
The last graph in the document is not capturing the school close contacts in yellow.
go.
I asked Julie Bedreau and Brenda to fix it.
Oh, sweet. Okay, good. Thank you.
You're right.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yes.
Plotting positive
When did she
cases.
send that email?
She actually sent that earlier. I forgot
Oh,
to
good.
say.
I'm like, hush, Cheryl, I hope you're not watching this and
So that
sending it
is-
anymore.
She did send
It's
that
plotting
earlier.
positive cases twice. Which
So
is
then
why
school-related close contacts is 148,
Yep.
so it's a lot closer to that
Still,
166.
to Catherine's point, it's
It's a spike. It is a spike.
It's gone
I
up.
mean, it's
Yeah.
gone from
It's a
what,
big spike.
for, if you
Yep.
break it down, for every one positive case, we were on average, what, between 2 and 3 close contacts to nearly like 1 to 7.
Last week, we had a number of instances where an entire classroom needed to be test and stay. They needed to work with an entire classroom in multiple cases because of the dynamics of the positive case,
So whereas a lot of our positive
which was
cases.
different in the past. And it's not necessarily because of the organization. It could be a number of different factors.
So next week, it's probably going to tell us if we are going to see a spike in the positive cases. If we don't see a spike in the positive cases, then those close contacts not going to be negative. So there isn't anything like we need to actually change, right?
Guidelines in terms of, I mean, if
School is not really open this week.
Well, yeah, that's the truth, but
Right.
are at least, the adults you mentioned about maybe specific teachers, are they able to distance maybe a bit more? The students can still have their group work, but maybe to kind of just ensure that all staff members can, distance a bit more, because I think, what is it, if they're outside of 3 feet, they're, you know what I mean, they're not close contacts, or.
But probably we're only talking about tomorrow, because Wednesday is going to be another off day.
Yeah.
So basically, like, what a mitigation protocol is going to be, people are going to like stay away from each other because people go back to their home for like Thanksgiving.
I just mean between now and Christmas to get us through what is the holidays, where people are seeing a lot of people, and the winter.
I will say, probably one of the most difficult thing for our teachers of our youngest students was over the course of the last year not being able to help them do something, not being able to hold their hand walking down the hall or taking them outside to recess, not being able, and that was something that they were not allowed to do for a while. And those are some of the things that for our youngest learners, the adults are very much part of helping them with their coats, helping them with different aspects of things. So that's what complicates it in a different way. Like, I hear what you're saying. Like, when we talked about, I think with our older students, it was really clear when we had this conversation a year ago about, well, it was easier to bring back older students and teachers being able to stay 6 feet away and still be able to circulate through the room because the students are so independent. But with our youngest learners, they're just not independent in the same way. And so even when we were separating the students, it was still a greater challenge to keep the adults from still having to interact with the students. And then we also have students who are just, they literally need physical support throughout the day in ways that others don't. And so those are some of the contributing factors that have played in to the scenario, which is a little bit different. So I totally hear you, and what I hope to relay is that we are having those conversations. We're not ignoring it. We are having those conversations, and we are talking about it. And I just don't think I don't think a change at this moment would change that.
So to that point, I mean, this is a plug for those building walkthroughs that we've been getting.
Yeah.
Like, I think about being in those elementary schools, and what did we all do when we walked in that K-2 classroom? We crouched down next to the kid because that's where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And because, you know,
Because that's
you
the
can't
right
lecture
thing.
at a
And that's good
6-year-old,
that's
you know,
good
like-
education. That's
right.
that's the quality education that they weren't getting, that they were missing, was the social interaction both with the adults and with their peers.
But is it not more than for 15 minutes? Like, to crouch down beside
Right.
a kid for 5
Well,
minutes or
and I
to
don't
put
know
their
the-
coat on
the particular
is not
schools.
the same as being in a
Yeah.
room maybe with a small lunch bunch group or something,
Right.
you know, for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately,
That's-
it's going to come down to what's our comfort level with positive, like with in-school transmission and with test and stay, right? Those are the two numbers we're looking at. How, you know, are kids getting COVID? If it were like spreading rapidly in the schools, we would say, okay, what are we doing that we don't want to do because that's too much.
Yeah.
So we have a threshold there. And then for test and stay, to your point, these kids are not missing school. They're testing, you know, like, but to your point, that's not nothing, right? There is an impact to 148 people having to test. At some point, sure, maybe at some point we'd say, if this were consistently, you know, 150 in-school contacts a week, yeah, we might have a conversation of like, geez, are we doing something, you know, is there something we can do a little different? Like, is there a slight shift?
Right.
You know, the 10 to 15 minute thing, I mean, maybe it's a cheat, you know, to be like, oh, just back out for 20 seconds and reset the clock. I don't think that
40
works.
minutes,
Right. I don't think that's how it works, but you know, it's certainly a conversation and something to watch.
And keep in mind, it's over 24 hours,
Yeah.
a total of 15 minutes, so it's not
It's not
necessarily
consecutive.
one-
It's not
yeah,
consecutive, right, sorry, thank you.
Right. I think this is one of those situations where I'm glad the conversations are happening, and we need to rely on our school nurses and our building principals and our administration to have these conversations about what promotes safety and what provides the best education and what is developmentally appropriate for our youngest learners. And I'm glad those conversations are happening.
I just want, to Chris's point, I just wanted to clarify about the 3-year transmission. Do you have, can you just kind of give some insight on the timeline of those? Like, are those all recent? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a really important piece of information for families, right? Are we seeing 150 exposures and, oh my God, in the last 2 weeks we've had 3 transmissions, or are those since September? Are they spread out?
Well, so I'm talking about 3 test and stay when the student came in 3 times out of 250, 3 of them returned with positive results, which is different than talking about in-school transmission prior to that. So you're asking about the 3 that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that it's happened since we had the test and stay, but I didn't ask. Well, it didn't happen the first week, so I can break that down. But I didn't ask them how soon it was. I didn't ask them if it was in the last couple of days when we had the conversation. I asked them to give me that information and that data. But I do know that it didn't happen the first week. So it would be at some point but I think that's an excellent question. I can get you that information.
So really, in the course of 3 weeks, there were 200,
Two-
around
it's
200
200,
school-related close
but-
contacts, and there were 3 of those tests that were positive,
Yeah.
indicating possible in-school transmission, not definite, because they could have been positive from elsewhere, but possible. I added up 3 weeks worth.
So
of
it's
school-related
92
close
plus
contacts.
53 plus 99, so out of the almost 250, it's like 240.
Well, that's a redundant number, right?
But those are tests, so that-
Those are tests, those are
You need
actual
to look
tests
at
that they
the-
conducted.
You need to look at the actual close contact numbers, because isn't that like one student is 5 tests,
Right.
essentially?
Yeah, but I'm just talking about out of those tests, I'm not, it is, but out of those numbers of tests, 3 of them came back with a positive result.
Many.
And then those positives also go through the contact tracing protocol.
Yep, yep.
Many in-school transmission did we have prior to November? Do you remember? Or did we have any?
Well, when I had sent the letter out from our first in-school transmission, I don't remember when that day was, but that was some point in mid-October, late October, is that when that was?
So that's
I
only
think that was our
one.
first.
So
It
that's
was,
the first,
yeah.
yeah. I'm just trying to remember. I knew it was small.
Yeah.
All right, it's getting late. Any other questions about COVID that we can tackle tonight?
Well, can I just ask, are the nurses able to accommodate that with the clinics? Like, if we do continue to have
Yes.
numbers like that, they're
Yeah,
happy?
I mean, we do have some CIC support now as well
Okay.
too, so it's been able to be helpful. And when there were more numbers, the good thing about that is that they know how many to expect, right?
Okay.
Because that has been in communication with the nurses, so the nurses are talking to the families and the families are giving them an idea as to whether or not they want to participate. They don't have to commit to it when they're having the conversation with the nurse, because someone could change their mind. But they're giving them an idea so that they have an idea as to who could be participating, so they're able to try to plan accordingly for that. It's made for some, the weather's also cooperated, so some people have been able to kind of wait outside versus waiting inside. But it's difficult, but it's been manageable. Yeah.
And 100 tests in a week is an average of 5 a day.
That's right.
So it's not 100 a day. I'm sorry, 20 a
No,
day.
20 a day.
It is 10, 20.
That's right,
Yeah.
20 a day.
It's very
20 a day over the 12.
I heard
This
it.
is messing up now.
I will second.
Valerie motion, Alicia seconded. All in favor? All right. Have a great night. Thanks.